may each be 465. Then we'll go to Delegate Stewart. So bear with me another minute or minute and a half. Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee for our hearing today, Wednesday, March 24th. We have approximately 13 bills today. 14, actually. The sponsor will present the bill. They will be followed by the favorable supporters, proponents. Then we'll take questions for those in favor. Then we'll move to the unfavorable, the opponents, and take questions for them as well. The first speaker on the proponent list may speak up to 5 minutes. You are not required, in fact, you're encouraged to be concise and shorter than that. Subsequent speakers can go up to 2.5 minutes, but again, are not required to use their full time. Please be additive. We also have written testimony from a number of people, and there are a number of bills today where there's no opposition. I will share that with you so you might actually trim your comments even more. You don't want to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. The final thing is, if you need to rely on written testimony, that's fine, but we prefer you talk to us, share your thoughts and opinions. But again, if you need it as an outline for you to develop those thoughts, please feel free to use a written testimony. With that, welcome Delegate Washington to EHE, and we will start with Bill 98. He will be followed by Cassie Moats, Joe Fisher, and then Ms. Moats, and there's no opposition. Welcome, Delegate Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Great to be with you all today. I'm going to be very quick because we also have a Ways and Means hearing that I'm going to be leading soon. So for the record, Delegate Alonzo Washington here to present on House Bill 98, which repeals the sunset provisions of the Maryland Higher Education Outreach and Access Program and renames it as the Maryland College Access Act. This legislation is really important because it helps low-income students who otherwise wouldn't go to college or who wouldn't obtain a associate's degree or any other types of after post-secondary education, get into college and get those degrees. And these nonprofits that help thousands of students, just one program such as First Generation College Bound through this program has helped 880 students with a post-secondary graduate degree, which is extremely important to supporting our economy and is supporting low-income students who would otherwise be victim to the cycle of poverty. This program has helped people like myself. I'm sure Mr. Fisher has talked to you all about me and my story, so I wouldn't belabor you with that. But I just wanted to say that this is a great program that should be extended. The governor funded years ago, and this is to help it to make sure that nonprofits like these continue to help young people like myself or the Joe Fishers or anyone else in this state and throughout the state make sure they get into college and graduate from college. So with that said, I urge a favorable report on House Bill 98, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Great. Let's go to Mr. Fisher. Joe, welcome to EHE.
Thank you, Chairman Penske. Glad to be here, everyone, and good afternoon to you. Yes, I am definitely in support of HB 98. This is a major contribution to the state of Maryland. As Alonzo said, Delegate Alonzo said, he exemplifies the work of this bill, of the results of it, and why it's needed. We've been 30 years doing this outreach on the ground floor in neighborhoods, reaching these low-income kids, making them aware to go to college. Many of you know, a few weeks ago, I just testified in a subcommittee Senate hearing concerning Senator Ellis's bill for the FAFSA about how a student came here, had not completed the FAFSA, and I called his office right away. We worked with him because that is so needed for FAFSA support. That's why this outreach is critical. So, and I said to Senator Ellis, first generation would have been the 911 to call to provide that support. And that's why you need organizations on the ground floor to make this happen. And also you need us because we're helping kids to go to college in the state of Maryland, especially to graduate with little to no debt. Also, what you need to know, why do we exist? We leverage existing dollars for these low income kids who are not completing the process. $2.6 billion in Pell Grant money was left on the table in 2018. And guess what? You got organizations like First Generation College Bound Foundation, others getting this money off the table for these kids that don't know, as well as state aid. So again, we just want to know we support this bill because the outreach is needed to get these kids, and we are able to not only get them to apply, but understand financial aid so they can go to a best fit, affordable college from not only from the community college, but to four-year colleges as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Fisher, thank you for all your work over those years helping students. I know across Prince George's County, I know there are demands for assistance beyond Prince George's County. Thank you. Cassie Motes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Madam Vice Chair from Baltimore, and to the committee. My name is Cassie Motz. I'm the Executive Director of the College Bound Foundation in Baltimore. Like Mr. Fisher in Prince George's County, we work with Baltimore City public school students to help them achieve their college dreams. We help them navigate the path to and through college. I will be brief, and I will tell you that this program, this EHE competitive grant, has truly been a game changer for Baltimore City public school graduates in college. The first year of the program, College Bound won a $25,000 competitive grant. As you all know, there's a $200,000 pot. We won some of that money and were able to create a program, and like Mr. Fisher said, leverage other money. And it's much easier to leverage private money when you have a little of the government taxpayer money from the Higher Education Commission. We were able to help a program that stayed with our scholars during college, the vast majority of whom attend public colleges in Maryland. I'm pleased to report that the oldest students in the program are now seniors, and of the original 44 students in the program, 34 are set to graduate within 4 or 5 years, which is an astounding number. That's 80%. Again, just to give you a little context, compared to Maryland public college students eligible for the Pell Grant, the average graduation rate is only 54.5%. So I urge the committee's favorable review of this bill. It really helps us to provide programming to students. We have peer mentors, older students in the program, adult mentors. We bring the group back together 3 times a year for sessions about writing resumes and updating your FAFSA, and we stay with students, and that's what we use this EHE competitive money for. And clearly the students' results speak for themselves, 80% set to graduate in 4 or 5 years. So thank you for your favorable consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Motz. Questions for Delegate Washington, Ms. Motz, or Mr. Fisher? Seeing none and no opposition, and I think many of us know it's a great program. That concludes the hearing on HB 98. Thank you for testifying. Delegate Washington, let's go to 171, Department of Education School Discipline Data Collection. Delegate Washington will be followed by Monisha Sharayo and Michelle Hall. Again, as I look at the witness sheet, there's no one signed up in opposition. Delegate Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, Delegate Washington here to present on House Bill 171. This is a bill that the House passed out unanimous out of the Ways and Means Committee and nearly unanimous out of the House of Delegates. It's a simple data collection bill for the school to prison to analyze the school to prison pipeline and also the number of suspensions that happen within our schools to ensure that we have the data. What the MSDE does every year is completely just a data dump of suspension data on the public at large, where it's not annotated or it's not put in a way that it makes sense. So what we're asking for MSDE to do is make sure that that data makes sense for our researchers and anyone else that reads this data, or parents at home that reads this data, to look at how many suspensions are happening and what's happening in our schools. For us, what we did was disaggregate the data, and in the last full school year we've had, which was 2018, 2019, we found that over 76% of the out of school suspensions here in the state of Maryland are derived from Black students. So Black students are suspended in the last school year at 76% of all the suspensions that have occurred, out of school suspensions that have occurred in the state, and Black students only make up 30% of the population, which is concerning to us because there's some inequalities that happen there that should not exist. The last point I'll make that this bill does, which would help out in making sure there's interventions that happen at these schools that have a high level of out of school suspensions for any type of demographic, is that it lowers the risk ratio threshold from 3.0 to 2.0 for identifying schools where disproportionality in their school discipline practices will contribute to the increased efforts to improve equity in school discipline. Right now, the threshold is too high at 3.0. So what it means is that if male students are suspended 3 times the population of its counterpart, then the state will come in and make interventions. What we're asking is for that to be lowered to 2.0. So if there's Black students that are overtly suspended at a higher rate than any other demographic in a school, then the school system will come in and make interventions and require there to be interventions like restorative practices, trauma-informed care, pieces like that would help improve student outcomes. And obviously we want to keep students in the classroom and so to ensure that they're learning. So this is a simple bill. This is also a recommendation from the commission on a school to prison pipeline and restorative practices that this committee helped start through a piece of legislation I introduced years ago. So with that said, I urge a favorable report for this simple piece of legislation that will get the data to us and create more interventions for students at the local level. So with that said, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate Washington. Ms. Sharayo is not here, but Ms. Hall is. Ms. Hall, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. And I do believe Ms. Sharayo was testifying on behalf of the Coalition to Reform School Discipline, and the Office of the Public Defender, who I'm testifying on behalf of, is also a part of that coalition. So I'll be covering her testimony as well. Okay. I appreciate you all having me here today to testify on behalf of HB 171. We all understand and take very seriously that education shapes the lives and opportunities and chances for children. And while there are a lot of systemic inequalities that run rampant in our world, the least that we can do is ensure that all children have access to a fair and equitable education. Yet students of color, and I see this every day in my work as a public defender, students of color and students with disabilities are routinely subject to exclusionary discipline, including out-of-school suspensions and expulsions that lead to lost education and foster the achievement gap, and as Delegate Washington said, the school to prison pipeline. This bill will make information about disproportionality in school discipline readily accessible and available to all. It will increase transparency so that we have better means to identify schools and districts which are high suspending and put in place the appropriate supports to ensure that children are not subject to disproportionate exclusionary discipline. And we'll have an accurate picture of which schools are high suspending, as well as what happens in alternative schools and public separate day schools, which currently we do not have good data for, or really any data for at all. HB 171 is essential to ensure that we understand where inequalities lie in our school discipline policies and implementation, and to build equitable schools that provide opportunities to all children. With that, we urge this committee to issue a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Questions for Delegate Washington or Ms. Hall? Senator Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was slow on the draw. I just wanted to say that these bills, of course, are great. They have a great last name associated with them. And I know while I miss being in the House.
Is that inherent bias? Or explicit bias?
Yeah, we'll have to test for that. Let's pass a bill. And also, I know that I do miss sitting next to Delegate Washington, but you know, having two Delegate Washingtons sitting next to each other on the same committee, there was a lot of confusion. I got a lot of his mail. So again, but honestly, thank you, Senator Delegate. Delegate Washington for this work. I just had a question, and maybe it was addressed. This was just something raised to me about the risk ratio, and I know you reduced it to from 3 to 1 to 2 to 1 for students with disabilities. Is race being changed as well? I just want to clarify, because sorry I didn't get a chance to see if there was any amendments to add a race disaggregation.
Yeah, it will be disaggregated by race. The bill itself will be what we're asking for them is disaggregated by race, by gender, by special needs of the student, disabilities, excuse me, and so we are requesting that. And if it's not clear, Delegate, we
you do the same thing. Yes. So yes, if we could just check and make sure that that's.
Did I just call you a delegate? Shoot.
Yeah, and I called you a senator, and everyone can see the confusion that happened for 4 years. But again, thank you for that, and I look forward to doing more work with you.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Delegate Washington, is it data disaggregated now? I mean, I've heard numbers quoted, like how many Black students are expelled or dismissed or whatever. So I always assume there was some disaggregation by categories. Is that not the case?
There's very minimal. Again, it's just a data dump. And so our researchers have to go in and conduct disaggregated themselves and provide. That's why I got the information from 2018, 2019, that 76% of our students, 76% of the suspensions are Black students in the state. So we got that from researchers, not from MSD.
Okay. Further questions for Delegate Washington or Ms. Hall? Seeing none, that concludes the on 171. We'll now go to HB 465, State Superintendent of Schools, Qualifications and Senate Confirmation. We'll have Delegate Washington followed by Ms. Dove from MSEA and President Crawford from the State Board of Education. Delegate Washington, you're back on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, Delegate Alonzo Washington here to present House Bill 465, which I think is a straightforward bill. All I want to do is give the Senate more power than what it has already.
Much appreciated.
I know, right? So what this bill simply does is change the way the state superintendent of schools is appointed and adds additional qualifications to the position. It's a reintroduction of a bill that we passed last year from the House into the Senate. Unfortunately, we weren't able to move this bill due to COVID-19. Not sure if you heard of that. But I think it also requires a cooling off period for the current members of Board of Education, so that there's, just like we have a cooling off period for us to become lobbyists, there's a cooling off period of a year for members of the board if they wanted to become the next superintendent. Doesn't prevent them from doing it, just requires a cooling off period for them. With that said, Mr. Chairman, that's the bulk of the bill itself, and I'll be willing to take any questions that, and I urge a favorable report of this bill, and that's not controversial at all. Thank you.
Great. Ms. Dove, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, good to see you all, members of the committee. Tina Dove with the Maryland State Education Association. So I know that the chair is fond of brevity, and as a social studies teacher, that tends to be antithetical to everything that we stand for, but I'll do my very best. I think I want to just make two important points here. I want to thank the Vice Chairman, Delegate Washington, for introducing this bill, because I think it's a very important bill for a number of different reasons. But the first thing I want to say is that there's an extensive body of research on the direct impacts and the direct correlation between the type of leader educators have and how outcomes for our students are. And I know that most of that research is sort of in the classroom space or in the school building space. But from my years of experience in teaching, I can tell you that leadership matters tremendously. And I flourished as an educator when I had an educational leader who was both someone who could mentor me in terms of pedagogy and practice, and someone who could handle all the other things in terms of keeping the trains running on time and keeping a school system, a school building working in the way in which it should, and fostering a healthy school community. And I know that it stands to reason that can only be the case the farther up into education you get. So it's mission critical, I believe, that we have an educational leader who is leading every educator in the state be one who is highly qualified, who is well experienced in this work, both in terms of the art and science of teaching, but also in what it takes to make schools work. So the qualifications that are listed here, the requirements for what our state superintendent should be, that should be a duh. That should not even be in question. There are some states that have opted to go with people that have business experience or may have been military leaders or other things. And there's nothing wrong with the type of leadership skills that they might bring to the table, but there's something very different about leading an educational space. Our kids are not widgets. And every day we go into the classroom and teach them is a new choose your adventure opportunity. So having someone who understands what that's like, that can collaborate and work with us to effectively help our children be successful is more important than we can imagine. And I think that that's also a super important thing to note right now, at this time in history, where everything we understand about education has been turned on its head. And the way in which we will proceed into the future is going to be unlike anything we've navigated in the past. So the next superintendent in this state has a Herculean task. They are walking into a very challenging situation in general, and we need that person to be well qualified to do that job. The last thing I will say is that this is not asking for something that is above the pale. Other cabinet level officials in this state go through advice and consent. There's a reason for that. This is not, trying to thumb a nose at the state board or anything else. With all due respect, the state board has yeoman's work to do. But I think it seems kind of elementary to require that the state superintendent of schools have to go through the same procedure of advice and consent that his or her peers do in other cabinet level positions. So with that, we urge a favorable report on this bill, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Dove. I was correct in saying that President Crawford was signed up as favorable, but the State Board of Education is in opposition. I was a little surprised when I read that myself. So that being said, we'll allow questions for Delegate Washington and Ms. Dove. Before I call on Senator Riley, Delegate Washington, the old language said shall be blank, blank, and blank. It's turned into must be. I hate to be technical and in the weeds here. I usually leave that to others. But do you know that reason that was changed was shall be experience, shall be a graduate, shall have 2 years experience. Was that not explicit enough that we had to say must be? We really mean it?
I think it's, thanks for the question, Senator. I think it's clarifying language for the bill drafter of the bill drafter. I think it must be is equivalent to shall be, I believe. But I have no idea. I didn't write that. Right.
Yeah, going from may to shall or shall to may, I get that. But going from to must be sort of threw me for a small loop. That's all.
Correct. I understand.
Riley.
Thank you very much. Delegate, thanks for bringing this bill forward. Since I don't know the current requirements of the state superintendent of schools, and I don't want to know all the basics, could you just share with the committee what the additional eligibility or qualifications that you put into your bill, please?
Yeah, additional qualifications, Senator. Thank you for the question, Senator Riley. Good to see you. I think the other qualification is that may not be a current member of the state board.
Okay, very good. And although there was some political opposition on the floor of the House, was there any opposition in the committee?
In the committee, let me just check. It was 15-5. So
No. Outside, I'm not worried about the political side of it. I'm asking what organizations or individuals or positions were against the bill?
Individuals outside of elected officials.
The chairman mentioned the state board. Was there any other organizations against the bill?
No, I believe it was just the state board, Senator.
Okay. Thank you very much, Delegate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
Let's go to the Vice Chair Kagan. Then we'll go to Senator Croza, then Senator Hester.
Hey, Mr. Chair, do you mind taking Senator Croza first?
No, that's fine. Senator Croza, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just following up on Senator Raleigh's question, I'm trying to catch up on the bill file here, but there is a testimony from the Public School Superintendents Association of Maryland. I'm not sure if they're testifying today or not, but in their testimony in our bill file, it says local superintendents believe that it is unnecessary to change the hiring and appointment process of the state superintendent, especially during the current pandemic and over a year-long executive search for a new superintendent. We do not see any benefit in potentially politicizing the process by requiring confirmation by the Senate. The legislature already has some oversight of the state board through the Senate confirmation of each board member. And if the delegate would care to respond to that.
Sure. I think, we are in you're right, you're right, Senator. We are in a pandemic where the education loss for students is at the highest level. And we just overridden the governor's veto on the Blueprint for Maryland's Future and we'll be providing some updates to the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. And I think as we move forward as a state, we must have to make sure that we're doing we must vet the next superintendent to make sure they agree with the legislature's Blueprint for Maryland's Future, because this governor doesn't seem to think that the Blueprint for Maryland's Future is worthy. So I think the legislature should have a say in who the next superintendent is going to be, because they're going to be implementing the Blueprint for Maryland's Future over the next some odd years where we have this 10-year plan. So for me, I believe that the Senate of Maryland is capable of extra vetting to make sure this person understands the Blueprint for Maryland's Future and can move it forward as the state of Maryland wants it to.
You're not concerned about the opposition from the local school superintendents in the field on the ground?
We're talking about state matters here.
Senator Hester? Okay, Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Washington, thank you for this bill. So I love the cooling off period, as you referenced the fact that legislators can't lobby and all that. And we passed last year that cabinet secretaries can't lobby for a year. So there's a consistency to that I think is really smart. What I'm wondering about, I brought a bill, Senate Bill 644, that also talked about advice and consent and certain folks going before executive nominations, specifically cabinet secretaries, the administrator of the State Board of Elections, and the superintendent. The one thing that we ended up drafting an amendment for was making sure that it didn't go into effect until after the new person is hired. What we don't want to do is provide any disincentive for us to get the very best person, because they would worry that what if I'm not approved or something. So the reason that I asked for Senator Croza to go before me is I was reading like 5 times your page 2, lines 4 through 6. And I just want to make sure that we're not going to get stuck in that sticky wicket. So I'm all for advice and consent and oversight and engagement by the legislative body. But I do think that we should make sure we get the very best person, and then after they've started serving, then we bring them here. So can you just speak to that and help me clarify your intent, and then making sure that the words reflect your intent?
Yeah, I think our intent here is with this bill from the House is to make sure that it's in line with any other appointment that happens within the governor's cabinet, any other cabinet position. So if you're the governor gets to appoint the Secretary of Dollar, and there's a period where that appointee gets to come into the Senate. There could be, I think I know what you're asking for is that they can be appointed, but then they come in and get the okay from the Senate. And
So the concern, I'm sorry, Delegate, go ahead.
And I was going to just end by saying that makes sense to me. That, but the intent here is that there is advice and consent from the Senate, and that we don't hold up the person from being appointed to the position.
So the concern is that I heard expressed was that there might be people who say, well, it might get political and I might be the very best person, but after I quit my current job and I move myself and maybe my family to Maryland to get ready to start this job, and then all of a sudden on a whim, advice and consent becomes complicated and I'm out on the street. And I don't think we'd want to risk that perception or reality. But I totally believe in advice and consent. I wonder whether you would be open to the concept of after she or he has been appointed, after they've served, then do a check-in, kind of a report card check-in, which is more the direction that I was going, so that the search committee can be unfettered and we don't lose access to a really good candidate who would be fearful of something getting fouled up.
I'm sorry. This is one of the most important positions here in the state of Maryland. We're spending over what % of our budget on education in the state of Maryland, close to that, or some number that's really high. And so for this person to want to come here, they're going to, it's with any other position as well here in the state of Maryland, that some person has to come here, move here, get the position, and then have the advice and consent of the Senate. We're not asking for any different here. I disagree with your amended version, Senator, of having what you just described. I think that, this is an really important position, and we must make sure we have the right person for the job. And this isn't about being political, but this is about making sure our kids our students have the best person at the helm of our education system here in the state of Maryland. And, we're spending a lot of money on education, $4 to $5 billion additional dollars moving forward. And the Senate, and this is the legislature's blueprint for Maryland's future, right? We passed that legislation here. We authorized it. And it's important that the legislature has a say in who's going to be the next leader of our system. And so, no, I disagree with the statement that you made.
Okay. All right. Well, Delegate, thank you. I appreciate it. We might be able to talk offline, but I totally agree with the concept of oversight. And certainly we do spend a lot of money and our children's future is critically important. So thank you. Thank you for answering the question.
Thank you. The final question or point. As you may know, Delegate Washington, I introduced the same bill 3 or 4 years ago. We decided not to move on at that point. Isn't there also a third option where the board, as they're hiring, consult offline, informally with some in the Senate to let them know who they're deciding on, so those people could say the person is terrific and is likely to get the support of the Senate, rather than this be a question mark? I know we're going to hear from President Crawford in a minute, and my guess is he's probably going to raise some of the same questions of it might stifle their ability to have a headhunter firm and look at people when they might be hesitant to come on if they're going to be rejected by the Senate. But there are a couple other ways to address this issue, aren't there?
Senator, I'm all for
not in place of, at the same, while endorsing your bill, there are some ways to minimize.
Got it. Okay, that makes
sense.
Okay.
Pushed out. Got
it. Okay, because I was about to say I would rather have a transparent process. we've tried that before in other locations in the state to have people involved in the selection process ahead of the full appointment process for a superintendent. But I believe that could happen where you have advice and consent, and things could move faster if the board does consider those the vetting process informally with the Senate. It could move faster, and I believe the governor could also work with the Senate and trying to do the exact same thing to make it move faster. So this process could move quicker. We don't want this to be done in a silo with just the state board. Again, we're talking about the state superintendent of Maryland of the richest state in the country, and the school system is going to be the best school system in the country as well. It makes no sense why we don't have a say in who the next superintendent is going to be.
Great. We're going to move on to President Crawford, the current president of the State Board of Education. And let me just clarify, the superintendent is technically not part of the executive branch or a secretary in the sense of a direct agency, because there's this layer of appointees of the governor who then select the person. So they're not quite in the exact same category as a secretary of one of the executive agencies. President Crawford, first of all, we hope your health is going well and you're strong and physically fit and ready to take on more challenges. Speaking of a challenge, I assume you want to talk about this bill. So please tell us your opinion on 465.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Chairman Pensky and Vice Chair Kagan. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I'm doing extremely well. I completed my radiation treatments on the 15th, rang the bell. My PSA test came back undetectable, so I'm cancer-free. I'm feeling great and regaining my strength. And I'm very happy to be here and to talk about Bill 465. We're here in respectful opposition to 465. And you have my written testimony, and I just want to summarize our concerns around the potential unintended consequences of the timing of the bill on the current surge. We are conducting a nationwide search. We're in the middle of that search right now. We're seeking, as everyone is in agreement, we're trying to find the absolute very best candidate for the state of Maryland. No question whatsoever. So we're in the process of doing that. And when you look at the top candidates, these are people that don't need a job. That's why you hire a search firm, because they go out and actually solicit and contact people and encourage people to apply. So they don't need a job because they already have one. They're well respected in their communities. There's no urgency on their part to move. And our search firm has also alerted us that don't be surprised if some of these candidates have 2 or 3 job offers in the hang. Our search firm has also told us that several of the candidates are aware of the bill and have asked, what's the impact on me if this bill happens right now in the middle of the search? And we've sought advice from our counsel, and essentially where we are right now in the search is we can't accelerate the search process to identify a candidate before the session is over. So we ask our counsel, what is the situation? And the counsel advises that the best we would be able to do is offer an acting position. So that means in practical terms, the board would be asking an exceptional superintendent candidate to leave his or her current position, perhaps relocate their family, and accept an acting position, perhaps for several months, with no guarantee of a Senate confirmation. And I think the question that we have to consider, because I think at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, the very best person we can find for the state. But the question we should ask ourselves is, would we be willing to accept a position under these circumstances? And that is our concern, our chief concern. Mr. Chairman, we appreciate the opportunity to testify. And again, we are respectfully presenting opposition to the bill. This concludes my statement, and I'm happy to answer any questions concerning the bill. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, President Crawford. Questions? Let's start with Senator Riley, please, followed by Senator Washington, followed by Senator Hester.
Thank you very much. Delegate, one of the most common questions I ask people who come to testify is, when does your bill become effective? And I failed to ask that of you. Could you share with the committee the effective date, and is this an emergency bill?
Yes.
Yeah, it's an emergency bill. Yes, Senator.
That's his question. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
I think I had Senator Washington followed by Senator Hester. Senator Washington, are you with us? Let's go to Senator Hester.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Delegate Washington, for bringing this really important bill. I think everybody on the call agrees this is one of the most important positions in the state of Maryland, and we want the best person. I'm just trying to sort out in my head what the impact on hiring will be and how we can involve the Senate, in this process, while at the same time not limiting, our choices. And so I'm wondering, Mr. Crawford, could you just walk us through the timeline? Like, when do we expect to hire somebody, and then would we have to wait till next year to confirm them? And do you see any potential compromise, such as what the chairman was talking about earlier?
I think in terms of, thank you, Senator Hester. We started this nationwide search process in July with, based on the current law, which says that we have to have a superintendent hired and in place by July 1 in order for that person to be considered the permanent superintendent. We're currently now in the search process. We are in the coming weeks, we'll be meeting with our search firm and looking at the applicants and scheduling first rounds of interviews. So we haven't even gotten to that point as it stands right now. So we're back. One of the things I did was we went back and just looked, is there a way we can compress where we are? And we just can't get there, because what we built this search was based on was the law that was in place at the time that said, be ready by July 1. So where we stand right now is that we would likely be at a point sometime in May. And again, that depends on numbers of candidates and the like, but probably early to mid-May of being to that point where we would have a short list, or perhaps being at a point where we would be able to identify an individual. So that's where we are right now. And in terms of working with that, I would just suggest again that we're open to having conversations on changes in the approach. I would need to really consult with the board and counsel on what we could do on this. But I think we're all trying to do the same thing, get the very best person for the state of Maryland and not frighten away potential candidates from the position.
Further questions for President Crawford? I know he's still with us. Thank you, President Crawford. Delegate Washington, quick question. I understand it's an emergency bill. I saw that in the uncodified section. If this doesn't go on the rapid transit over the next week, and it still passed as an emergency bill, and the advisement consent couldn't happen in the next session, would they be acting or an interim? And that's not addressed in the bill. So, I mean, I understand there's multiple routes to get this done expeditiously. And I know there's one that's looming. If it doesn't hit the first, if the first stoplight slows it down a little bit, how does this play out over the next year?
Are you, I'm sorry, Senator, are you talking, at first you were going about the bill route because it's an emergency bill, so it becomes law.
Well, it's an emergency, but whether it gets done by presentment is a story. In other words, it could pass April 10th. It's an emergency bill. It takes effect 30 days later, whatever the time limit is. So, but it still calls for advice and consent. So if they hire someone, does that implicitly make them enacting until we can reconvene in next January?
I think I would lead to council on this and ask council that question to get back to you on that one.
Okay.
About the process and how it works. I would think that it would operate the same as any other appointment that the governor makes,
Right.
where there's an appointment and then there's a threshold of time, and the Senate then approves of that person. But I'm sure that, you know, while I have this microphone, that, you know, I'm sure that we have an opportunity here to really make sure that we vet the right person, and that the Senate of Maryland has an opportunity to make sure that and I'm sure there won't be any holdups there. I'm sure the Senate will want to confirm this person as quickly as possible to help mitigate any additional learning loss, and to make sure that we have things taken care of within our school system. So
thank you. Thank everybody who testified on this bill. We appreciate it. That concludes the hearing on the delegate's third bill, whose number 465. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to move to Delegate Stewart, HB 77, driveway sealers, prohibitions, Safe Sealant Act of 2021. After Delegate Stewart, we have John Mallory and Tom Ennis. And then we'll go to the opponents, Kevin Miller, Tom Decker, Victor Davis, Tony Heffernan. And we also have a favorable, we're going to have Cindy Zahn lead off after Delegate Stewart. And again, I see some of these people are new names to appearing before EHE. So please be yourself. We just want to know what's on your mind and share it. We're not going to bite, promise. Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Chair Pinsky, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Vaughn Stewart. This is HB 77. So this bill bans the use, the manufacture, and sale of pavement sealants with harmful levels of toxins called PAHs. Pavement sealants are black, shiny substances that are sprayed or painted on top of pavement to protect the underlying asphalt and also to look nice. The House of Delegates passed HB 77 because high PAH sealants cause cancer and harm the Chesapeake Bay, and because an alternative exists that costs about the same and works about as well. So your committee heard a different version of this bill last session, introduced by Senator Lamb, and in response to the feedback from that hearing and from House feedback we got, we worked both over the interim and during this session with MDE and with industry, with Sean Campbell of Seaboard Asphalt in Baltimore City, to craft the compromised version of the bill that's before you today. And so here's a brief summary of what we did in the amendments. So first, we clarified the bill applies to high PAH sealants instead of coal tar sealants. That's simply because not all high PAH sealants are coal tar based, and also as technology improves, perhaps not all coal tar based sealants will have high levels of PAHs. Secondly, in response to industry concerns, the amended version of the bill clarifies the bill only applies to sealants on parking lots and driveways. Third, in response to industry wishes, the amended bill will allow especially high road manufacturers to label their products as low PAH. And so we're hoping this will provide an incentive for future innovation. And then fourth, in response to industry concerns, the bill no longer bans the manufacturing of these sealants for out-of-state sales. And with the amendments, the Maryland Transportation Builders and Materials Association, the Maryland Asphalt Association, the Teamsters Local, and of course, Sean Campbell of Seaboard Asphalt have all dropped their opposition. So we feel good about the compromised product that's before you today. But let's talk a little bit more about why we need to ban high PAH sealants. So first, PAHs pose significant human health risk when sealant dust is tracked into homes through footwear. This is especially terrifying for those of us with young kids, because this is especially harmful to children. If you can think of a scientific or health acronym, EPA, MMA, HHS, USGS, the odds are good that they have come out to say that these high PAH sealants are dangerous to human health. And this is an important point because the opposition will attempt to persuade you that the scientific evidence is muddied or unclear. It's not. Living adjacent to a pavement with a sealant high in PAHs increases lifetime cancer risk up to 38 times. And much of that increased risk, as I mentioned, is during childhood. And the industry knows this. Workers have already received legal settlements when they develop cancer later in life. And the Steelworkers Union encourages retired workers to get regular cancer screenings. Second, sealants have a significant and well-documented effect on in the environment, and particularly when sealants run off into waterways and into the bay. And the use of sealants is associated with damage to fish, and importantly, in a state like Maryland, a decrease in population to crabs, clams, and oysters. And then lastly, the reason this bill is important is it's a big win for Maryland's economy and for taxpayers. The use of these sealants hurts industries that rely on healthy populations of fish, crabs, oysters. And the sealants also add cost to taxpayers in the form of cleanup costs and, of course, the incalculable health consequences. Any negative economic fallout is mitigated by the availability of, as I mentioned, a great alternative, asphalt-based sealants. They contain about 100 times fewer PAHs that run off, and they're about as expensive and about as effective. But don't take my word for it. An industry expert at Sealmaster, if you go to pavementpro.com, says, quote unquote, both materials have their strong points and both materials have their drawbacks. And he added that low pH asphalt sealants are a quote unquote viable and to some a better alternative. I'd also want to note that market research firms have concluded that this overall industry, the seal coat industry, is set for tremendous growth into the future, even after they accounted for the proliferation of bans on high pH sealants like you're seeing today. And so while my sympathies are with any Maryland business that believes banning this harmful product will hurt their bottom lines, I hope and genuinely believe that they will successfully transition to selling these existing low pH asphalt-based products in Maryland, like so many of their competitors have already successfully done. So in the name of human health and in the name of the Chesapeake Bay, I urge a favorable report on HB 77.
Thank you, Delegate Stewart. Great job. Your lead proponent is going to be Cindy Zahn from Safer Sealants team, Burley Manor Middle School, followed by John Malari and Tom Ennis. Ms. Zahn, welcome to EHE.
Hello. Hello, my name is Cindy Zahn. I'm an 8th grader at Burley Manor Middle School, and I've been a part of the Safer Sealants team since I was in 5th grade. For the last 3 years, we have done our research. We have read a wide variety of scholarly articles, and we've interviewed and talked with high-level experts, including those at the Maryland Department of Health. Everyone agrees that high pH sealants are harmful. Even Lowe's, Home Depot, and other major home improvement companies know that they're harmful, which is why they do not sell these harmful products. Highly respectable agencies such as the EPA, the World Health Organization, and the CDC, as well as the European Union, have all classified high pH sealants at the highest levels of carcinogenity. Our opponents from the driveway sealant industry have accused us of taking a narrow view of the data. However, the industry is also keenly aware of the dangers of these products. It is clearly written on the safety data sheets of these products that high pH sealants are known carcinogens. We have added amendments to address the concerns presented by our opponents. We worked with Sean Campbell of Seaboard Asphalt, located in Baltimore County, to add a tiered recognition system to incentivize manufacturers to create low pH sealants. This would reward manufacturers like Mr. Campbell, who has created a new driveway sealant formulation with 0% pHs. Additionally, our amendments address the concerns of legislators worried about jobs leaving Maryland, as the bill now allows for the manufacture of high pH sealants to be sold out of state so that jobs will remain in Maryland. The Maryland Department of the Environment has already approved these amendments and will oversee the enforcement of the regulations to ensure that the same standard is upheld across the state. In 5th grade, when my teammates and I learned about these high pH sealants, we were confused as to why these dangerous substances were still able to be sold. We were confused why our leaders would allow these dangerous substances to be sold. For the past 3 years, we did our part. Now it's your turn to do yours. Please support House Bill 77. Thank you.
Zan, congratulations. That was magnificent, and thank you for being an advocate for so many years. Hope you'll come down and join us as a staffer or as a legislator in the future. Thank you for being with us. Next witness is John Mallory from the DC Department of Energy and the Environment, a proponent. Unfortunately, the Maryland Department of the Environment just sent informational and didn't take a position. So we're very glad to have Mr. Mallory. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair and the committee members. Thank you for having me. I'll just quickly add, Ms. Zahn, that's a very tough act to follow there. Thank you for your testimony. I'll try my best. My name is John Mallory. I'm an environmental protection specialist for the District of Columbia's Department of Energy and Environment. And I'd like to extend the district's support for Maryland House Bill 77. You have my written testimony, and today I'm going to talk with you very briefly on why this ban prevents a very achievable effort for Maryland due to some similar laws we have here in the district. You've heard a lot already about polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs, from Delegate Stewart. I'll just reiterate that a multitude of studies have connected coal tar sealants to PAH contamination in waterways and cancer risk in humans. And the EPA has listed 16 PAH compounds as priority pollutants and 1 PAH compound as a known carcinogen. All of these are routinely found in high PAH pavement sealant products. And maybe even more importantly, the issue is very much a local one. Alongside the Anacostia River here in the district, Baltimore Harbor has one of the highest reported levels of PAH contamination in the entire Chesapeake Bay watershed. So the data was clear, and in 2009, the district passed a ban on coal tar products. And our experience with the ban so far has demonstrated that it's a very practical and cost-effective way to reduce toxic pollution in our water bodies. I'd also like to call attention to the district's 2018 legislation that built upon this ban by prohibiting the sale and use of new high pH sealant products that have entered the market that are not specifically coal tar. The legislation added a PAH concentration threshold of 0.1%, much like Maryland's bill will. To date, similar bans have been passed in several cities and counties across the country, and states like Wisconsin are joining Maryland in considering statewide bans. But as with any new law, we have experienced some challenges in implementation. PAH concentrations are not readily available on sealant product labels. To combat this, DOEE, with funding from the EPA Chesapeake Bay program, has spearheaded efforts to standardize methods for testing PAHs in pavement sealants. By the end of 2021, DOEE will have a standard testing protocol publicly available for use. This protocol is the first of its kind in the nation. And in addition, the project will use this protocol to test a wide range of products on the market to make a list of low pH products that meet 0.1% or 1% concentration thresholds, again, to be made publicly available. In closing, DC and Maryland are both signatory partners to the Chesapeake and Anacostia Watershed Agreement, so we obviously support all these efforts to restore these vibrant ecosystems. We urge Maryland to join the district in banning high pH sealants, as doing so will help protect both states' waterways. Together, we can provide an example of cross-jurisdictional policy collaboration to protect the health of our residents and natural resources. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mallory, for stating your view, and I hope you will be doing it as a state before too long. The next witness is Tom Ennis, Coltar Free America. Welcome, Mr. Ennis. Good to see you again.
Greetings. Thank you. Yeah, Tom Ennis here from Austin, Texas. I helped Austin pass and defend the nation's first ban of coal tar sealers, and we followed up in DC's footsteps in 2019 to pass a ban of high pH products as well. Also, I'm a licensed professional engineer. I also am the Director of Regulatory Affairs for the Asphalt Seal Coat Manufacturers Association. That's a group that is committed to manufacturing low PAH products. There's about 10 or so different companies that do that currently. There's a lot that could be said, but what I wanted to highlight is, first of all, with what Ms. Zahn said about their surprise. I recently had a conversation with the head of the most powerful laboratory in the United States, the National Magnetic Laboratory in Tallahassee, Florida. When he learned about coal tar sealers, he said, "I think I'm in an episode of the Twilight Zone, because how could we allow this even today?" So from a fifth grader to a PhD high-level scientist, the surprise is the same. There are 26 different research entities that have found this to be a problem. And I wanted to highlight with my remaining time 4 contractors who used to use coal tar sealants and high pH products that switched. 3 of the 4 developed cancer in their families. That would be, there's one gentleman out of David Fackler out of Ben Salem, Pennsylvania. He said, the cost of using this product is greater than the results. The cost is the harm to the contractors putting it down. It affects kids playing in the parking lot. It will affect people tracking into the carpet and the carcinogens in their home. The risks outweigh the benefits in spite of the performance. Another gentleman developed cancer, throat cancer, and he said, I'll spare you the expletives. I've been spraying Coltar since I was 11 years old. I just went through neck surgery and 33 treatments for radiation. I had throat cancer, and they believe it could be from spraying Coltar when I was a kid. FFF. If I had to sell Coltar to make a living, I would close my plant. And then there's Earl Archie. Family used Coltar for a whole generation or two. And then in the 80s, they decided to use a non-toxic product. And his granddaughter said on social media, most days we like to make jokes about on social media, but Coltar is no joke. This is serious, folks. That's why we worked hard in the 80s to make a product that doesn't burn skin or have PAH chemicals found to cause cancer. It's personal for us. Earl Archie, father, grandfather, and now great-grandfather to our family, died from throat cancer and skin cancer. He was an amazing man, gone too soon.
Mr. Ennis, I need you to wrap up your testimony, please.
And that would conclude my support, reason why.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your taking the time to be here. There are questions from colleagues and there are opponents. Senator Riley, your hand has been up for quite a while. Why don't you kick us off?
Thank you very much. Delegate, how many other states have banned this product?
I believe it's 3 jurisdictions currently. Mr. Ennis can correct me if I'm incorrect, but I believe it's Minnesota, Washington State, and then the District of Columbia.
Okay, very
but
good.
it's important to note that
Maine as well.
Maine. Oh yeah, Maine as well. A ton of local jurisdictions within a bunch of states have done sort of municipal bans.
Austin, as he mentioned, yeah. So tell me, how come there's not federal regulation in this product? Restricting.
Well, that's a good question. I think we've been waiting on it for a long time for the federal government to come down more strictly. I actually have a lot of faith that maybe the Biden administration will be the first one to come down and bring the hammer down from the federal level. But a number of federal agencies have been sounding the alarm for years and years. Mr. Ennis mentioned that he worked in Austin on the nation's first ban. He did not mention that was in 2003. Here we are nearly 2 decades later still talking about this. So I don't know why it's taking the federal government so long to act. Obviously, we know things move like molasses sometimes in DC, and I'm hoping that Maryland can show them how it's done this year.
Thank you very much. Now, Ms. Ahn did a great job. We love to hear from our smart young students. You mentioned something about the Department of Health. Has the Maryland Department of Health weighed in on the issue with regulations?
No, what I think Ms. Zahn meant is that we work with them extensively on these amendments and this amended bill that's before you, and that they actually provided some language to us and like the amendment. So they haven't actually taken a position on the bill, but by all accounts, they seem ready and able to enforce it if we do pass it this session.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Senator Riley. Senator Hester, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And my question is for the Burley Manor Safer Sealants team. I just want to thank you all for coming back 3 years in a row. Ms. Zahn, your testimony was wonderful. And I just wanted to point out that I'm also thankful for the testimony from Jennifer Littlefield, Melanie Ritter, Mimi Condeta, I hope I said that right, Robin Page. You guys have been great. And of course, Burley Manor is in my district. So my question is, what have you learned over the past 3 years, and what changed between last year and this year? Because I understand that you were able to work with industry. Can you just really quickly summarize what changed in the bill?
So like last year, the wording was kind of not what we wanted. It was mostly banning like Coltar, but this year we're banning all high pH sealants because, as Delegate Stewart said, not all high pH sealant are made of coal tar, and not all coal tar sealants have high pHs.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful.
Thank you, Senator Hester. Senator Lamb.
Thank you. A question for Mr. Ennis and Mr. Mallory. Since you are both in jurisdictions that have banned the use of this, have you seen any appreciable, noticeable impact to consumers or businesses? Have people been able to fairly easily switch over to other products that are compliant?
I can go first, Tom, I guess, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
Sure. The district's ban on coal tar has been in place since 2009, and we have not received a single complaint from business owner, resident about finding compliant products on the market to use. And in fact, we have not actually even tested for coal tar through our enforcement efforts in the last 6 years. So to say that it's been pretty successful through that regard is pretty apparent.
And Mr. Ennis?
Yeah, I would say, because we predated some of the first regulations, we did have some initial problems with the quality of the products. But by the time, let's just say, when San Antonio, a sister city just 70 miles from us, they were using seal coat products on local roadways with great success. Some of the early stuff that we had, it just re-emulsified when it rained. So we had a quality problem early, to be honest with you, but the industry has caught up and we've got quality products out there now.
You're not seeing anything like businesses being, just getting shuttered and going out of business and driveways just peeling apart because of this more recently, right? No real concern like that.
In fact, complete opposite. What we find, if I may, in the state of the industry, asphalt is just not the same quality as it used to be. So people are putting supplements into asphalt products at day one, the hot mix asphalt. So it's your grandpa's asphalt isn't the same as it is today. So it's a different world, and we have to catch up with the current state of the technology.
Okay. Your grandpa's asphalt, I guess. One quick question for Ms. Zahn. I appreciate you being here. Were you here last year I know we had a lot of students from Burley Manor here last year. Were you here last year yourself?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again for being here. Appreciate your tenacity with this bill.
Yeah, love the Howard County leadership we get from our young people, as well as our grown-up people. We're going to shift to the opponents. We've got Kevin Miller kicking us off, Image Asphalt Maintenance. Mr. Miller, welcome to EHE.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Kevin Miller. I'm the president of Image Asphalt. In 1990, as a 20-year-old College Park student, I started sealing driveways and I've continued to maintain pavement ever since. I've had no adverse health effects from applying sealer, nor has any of the hundreds of employees who have worked for me. Coal tar doesn't even harm vegetation. All the other liquid asphalt sealers that I've used are simply inferior to coal tar, and I've used them all. At Image Asphalt, we will not sell inferior sealers because of their poor value and our inability to warranty the product. If coal tar sealers are banned, the process of maintaining your pavement will be less effective, more expensive, and more important, will result in a much larger carbon footprint. It's worth considering that using an inferior sealer that is half as effective would result in twice as much application and therefore twice the CO2 emissions compared to using coal tar. Also, without proper and effective sealing, the pavement will need to be replaced more often, which involves many dump trucks, sweeper trucks, milling machines, pavers, rollers, skid steers, not to mention the equipment required to simply make the asphalt. All this equipment will be spewing CO2 emissions and harming the environment. Alternatively, sealing operation emissions come from only a seal truck and a blower. This might be 10% of the emissions of a paving operation. Most important, please also consider that the Safer Sealant Act would put many of my employees out of work. I have employees that have been with me 15 to 20 years. They've perfected their position in the pavement maintenance trade, and they'd have nowhere else to go. So before voting on the Safer Sealing Act, please consider that coal tar-based sealers are not dangerous to personal or environmental health. Again, it doesn't even kill grass or vegetation. Without coal tar sealers, pavement maintenance will require a dramatic increase in CO2 emissions, and banning coal tar sealers will cost many industry professionals their jobs. So we respectively oppose this bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Next witness is Tom Decker with Seal Master in Cockeysville. Mr. Decker, you have up to 2.5 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee and everyone else. My name is Tom Decker with Seal Master, owner of the Seal Master manufacturing plant in Cockeysville, Maryland. Pavement sealer saves parking lots, makes them last so much longer, and saves owners of commercial parking lots the cost of repaving much more often, as Mr. Miller mentioned previously. It costs about 10 times as much to mill and pave a parking lot than it does to seal coat a parking lot. I need to point out, and I don't believe many people know, that the previous bans in the 4 counties in Maryland were one of the main reasons that Gemsil Pavement Products closed their plant in White Marsh, Maryland, which successfully made coal tar and LP pavement sealer since 1987. The result of closing that plant cost 14 people good paying jobs with benefits for no reason. For 25 years, I've operated Seal Master in Cockeysville, and we're the only remaining manufacturer of coal tar and LP pavement sealers in the state of Maryland. The passage of HB 77 will reduce my revenue to a point where I'll have no choice but to close my business. I will lose my livelihood, and 22 of my employees will lose good paying jobs and all of their health insurance benefits. Moreover, hundreds of our customers who rely on us to provide pavement sealer for them to operate their businesses will be losing their jobs as well as their employees. Since the early 1960s, coal tar and LP pavement sealers have been safely manufactured and applied in the state of Maryland. As a matter of fact, homeowners applied coal tar pavement sealer out of 5-gallon buckets for 50 years until the first bans came on board. The bill's proponents cannot produce evidence of a single person who has been injured or benefited from these bans in the state of Maryland. HB 77 will not only cause a significant loss of jobs and increase the cost of owners of commercial parking lots and driveways in Maryland, it's going to put us out of business. Since the early 1990s, all states and U.S. territories have been required every 2 years to report causes of impairments to their bodies of water for the Federal Clean Water Act. PAHs have never been
Mr.
listed.
Decker, I need you to wrap up your testimony if you could, please. Your time has expired.
Yeah, I just, one more sentence. Since the 1990s, states and U.S. territories have been required every 2 years to report causes of impairments to their body of water. The federal,
Thank you, Mr. Decker.
Clean Water Act. And PAHs have never been considered a cause of impairment ever. Thank you for my testimony.
Thank you for their testimony. We appreciate you taking the time to join us. Next is Victor Davis, Pavement Depot of Maryland in Frederick. Mr. Davis.
Yes, how you doing? My name is Victor Davis, and I oppose Bill HB 77. I would like to start by thanking you for allowing me to testify today. I own Pavement Depot of Maryland. We are one of the largest sealer distributors on the East Coast that does not manufacture sealers. We have nothing to gain by choosing one vendor over another. Our goal is to provide our customers with the best products. I'm here representing my employees, the 150 seal coat companies, and their thousands of employees, as well as thousands of property owners. The sealing industry preserves and maintains asphalt for its commercial and residential property owners. Good sealers and protective coatings preserve and extend the life of your asphalt pavement. This provides major cost savings for the property owners, as well as fewer environmental impacts from milling removing and replacing the asphalt. When I was made aware that the bill was changed from banning coal tar in Maryland to sealer with 1,000 parts per million PHs, my heart dropped. HB 77 would leave our hardworking industry with no viable alternative sealer replacements. We only sell water-based LP and some coal tar sealers. I'd like to clarify what LP is. LP, which stands for a low pH, is a non-coal tar viable alternative to coal tar with 90% less pHs. HB 77 would ban both these products, leaving us with no viable alternative. We sell no asphalt-based sealers due to their poor protection performance. When I watched the last hearing in the House, the proponents for HB 77 stated there are viable alternatives to these sealants and offer comparable results. This is 100% false. The internet is a great tool, but only as good as the source. I have been in this business for approximately 16 years, have tested every asphalt-based sealer on the market multiple times, and found they severely underperform the LP and coal tar sealants. A good, properly applied sealant should last a minimum of 3 to 4 years, which LP and coal tar both do. No sealant manufacturer has been able to create a satisfactory asphalt-based product, including Seaboard. Please vote no on HB 77. In these troubled times, it would devastate our industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis, for your testimony. And the last opponent, Tony, who's been parked on the side of the road. Tony Heffernan, NARA Industries, Inc. from Trenton, New Jersey. Welcome, Mr. Heffernan. You have up to 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. My name is Tony Heffernan, and I do oppose HB 77 as well. I work for NARA Industries. We manufacture pavement products around the country, but to supply Maryland, we do it in Trenton, New Jersey. I've worked there for approximately 6 years. Prior to that, I was a contractor for 30 years, and I've applied and seal coated I've been in this industry now for 36 years. I have no health effects. No one ever worked for me. I had 200 plus employees at the time, no health effects as well. I did have 3 gentlemen that did work on my asphalt side of the business that did pass away due to emphysema, most likely due to inhaling asphalt, but that's not sealant. NARA Industries about 8 years ago developed a lower pH product, and we lowered our carbon footprint by 90% from coal tar, which is being spoke about, as well as PAHs. So I can't speak to any other industry that has lowered their carbon footprint by 90% and has created an effective product as well. It was a feat to accomplish that, but we did. And as some people have stated, Victor and Tom have stated, these products, this product that we did develop, an LP-based product, has been a far superior product to a lot of the other alternatives that are talked about. So contrary to what people believe, the alternative products are not as good as the one we have developed. And again, we have lowered our carbon footprint by 90%. Banning these products could potentially ruin the industry. It also cause more asphalt to be stockpiled because it will not protect the asphalt as well. And it'll cause more asphalt to have to be made. On PAHs, this bill talks all about PAHs, the Polyameric Hydrocarbons. PAHs are present in everything, pretty much. Anything that's burnt or decomposed, heat in your house, hamburgers, compost, fuel, tires, telephone poles, etc. We always have PAHs as long as it's living organisms and fossils on this earth. As Tom had said, PAHs have never been identified as a cause of impairment in any of Maryland's reports under the Clean Water Act. Coal tar and LP sealants are 70% less PAHs when they're dried and on the ground. So when they're liquid form, they are higher, but when they're dried on the ground, they're 70% less. The surfaces sealed with coal tar sealants do not contribute to significant amounts of pHs in the aquatic environments. Science, not theory. That's all I have to say, madam. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Heffernan. When you're talking about carbon, I assume you're from Boston.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I am. Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Originally, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for being with us in Annapolis virtually. I have
Thank you.
and Senator Carozza has a question. Senator Carozza, why don't you go before me?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I think we're all learning a lot about a subject that I did not know much about before this hearing and in the past about sealant. So my questions are really try to have a better awareness as we consider this legislation. And I just want to start by prefacing that we all have the same shared goal of the safety and health of all of our residents. I'm a cancer survivor myself, so this has caught my attention. But I wanted to ask Mr. Miller, I was reading through your testimony, and at the very end, Mr. Miller, you mentioned 2 points. That first, you mentioned that tar-based sealers are not dangerous to personal or environmental health. So I first wanted to ask you if you had looked at the testimony of the proponents of the bill to, since obviously they have taken a different perspective. And two, this is really to educate me, you said without coal tar sealers, pavement maintenance will require a dramatic increase in CO2 emissions. So I need to understand that as well. If you could specifically address those two questions. You're on mute. Mr. Miller, you're on mute.
There we go.
Okay, I think I'm off mute now.
There you go.
Okay, thank you for the question. So as far as the health concerns, I'm basing that essentially on the fact that I've never seen an OSHA bulletin or any industry articles or any of my employees or myself. I've spent a lot of time using coal tar. My first 10, 12 years in the business, I was applying myself. That's been my experience. I would have thought it would have been in an industry or an OSHA or some sort of Maryland health article, something of that nature. I've never heard anything about coal tar being a health issue to the people applying it. And your second question, as far as coal tar and LP are just far superior to any other sealers. So they actually do the job of maintaining and preserving pavements. And they lengthen the life of the pavement. Without it, or if you try to apply asphalt emulsion, you're gonna have to repave twice as much, or maybe it's 40% as much. And the equipment to pave and make asphalt simply burns a lot more fuel and creates more pollution. And it's as simple as that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Thank you, Senator Carozza. I had a question for Mr. Decker, if you want to start by unmuting while I'm asking it. But you mentioned, and Mr. Miller mentioned, sort of I'm going to go out of business if this happens. Can you please explain why it is that you couldn't just pivot from brand A to brand Q well, maybe I shouldn't say Q anymore, brand A to brand D or something that is healthier, safer, better for the environment, better for public health? What is it that prevents you from continuing in your business?
80% of what we sell is coal tar or LP-based pavement sealer. It's actually 85% last year. So since coal tar was banned in the 4 counties, the seal coating in those counties has decreased dramatically. People don't know what high PAH sealers are. They just say bans driveway sealers. 10 out of 10 people you ask of what a PAH is, they don't even know what it is. They've never heard of it before. So they just see driveway sealers have been banned. And the problem is we cannot get people to buy asphalt-based sealer, contractors, as long as these other products are available, because if somebody sealed your driveway and 6 months later it wore off, you would be pissed. Excuse my French. But so people don't want to buy something that doesn't work. So, you know, I would have to go out of business because I would lose so much revenue. And I have, you know, a lot of equipment. I have manufacturing equipment, trucks, trailers, you know, all these things that I need to have a certain level of revenue in order for me to break even.
Okay.
So
Thank you. Thank you.
take away 2/3 of my business, I'm going to be screwed.
Right. So Delegate Stewart, we are going to wrap up this bill, but if you have information about the performance qualities and availability of other brands, I think the committee would be curious to learn about that. You know, and Mr. Decker makes important points, so if you can provide us with that information. I see committee colleagues' hands up, so Delegate Stewart, witnesses on both sides. Ms. Zan, congratulations. Thank you all for being with us today in EHE. That completes hearing on House Bill 77. Thank you. Next bill we are going to is Delegate Lehman. Welcome from District 21. She has House Bill 146 for us, Department of Agriculture, Spay Neuter Fund, Extension and Report. Delegate Lehman, why don't you kick us off, and then we've got your witnesses.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to members of this esteemed committee. It is my first time testifying before this committee. Glad to be here. For the record, I am Delegate Mary Lehman, here requesting your favorable consideration of House Bill 146 that reauthorizes the state spay and neuter grant fund. That fund is supported by a fee on commercial pet food, and the grants are made annually to nonprofit organizations and county organizations that do spaying and neutering of cats and dogs. The law has been very successful, and it is scheduled to sunset in September of 2022. I work with advocates who did not think it was wise to wait until our 2022 legislative session to consider changes to the law in the event there was a failure to reach consensus. I'm
texting Cheryl. Okay.
I agree with that sentiment. So there is an issue around whether the fee that's been in place on pet food for about 9 years, 8 or 9 years, should be increased. So a little bit of background on the law. The purpose is to reduce animal shelter overpopulation and euthanasia rates by funding spay and neuter procedures for pets in areas where the services would otherwise be unaffordable to pet owners. The bill extends the law for another 10 years, and initially it will retain the current pet food licensing fee. That fee is set at $100 per product label. So the good news is that this program has in fact resulted in the spaying and neutering of 65,216 dogs and cats, and that is wonderful news. The tragedy, though, is that Maryland is still euthanizing a staggering number of animals. According to the Department of Agriculture statistics between 2014 and 2019, Maryland shelters took in 86,384 dogs and 146,859 cats. So that's a large number. Of those, 22,287 dogs and 75,061 cats were euthanized. So we're talking about almost 100,000 Maryland pets being euthanized over that period. I think probably a lot of you are pet owners, and you would agree these statistics are very grim. Despite the promise of this low-cost spay and neutering, the promise these services provide, neither the pet food industry nor the Department of Agriculture could agree on what an appropriate pet food license fee increase might look like over the next decade. So, Madam Chair, I worked with animal advocates and the department on what I believe is a good compromise. So we're going to require the Department of Agriculture to evaluate an expansion of spay-neuter services and an increase in the fee based on pet food industry considerations that would enhance this program. In other words, if the specific goal is to increase spay-neuter rates and reduce euthanasia rates by, say, 20%, the department would have to figure out a corresponding food license increase to achieve that. So there's no question this is a really important law. We do not want to let it expire. We need it to reduce the number of unwanted dogs and cats and the euthanization. We need to lower the euthanization rates of those animals. And to do so, we need to reauthorize the law, and we need to get that funding formula that I talked about right over the next decade. I think an evaluation of an appropriate increase of the fee seems to be the best way forward, and it's the most fair way to determine how to enhance the grant program and save more Maryland pets in the process. So I ask for your favorable report, and if I could present my panelists, I just have two. You should have their names: Mercedes Pellet from Heart, and then Becky Robinson from Alley Cat Allies. And that concludes my testimony.
Thank you, Delegate Lehman. And I suspect that my Corona kitty, my adopted Corona kitty, thanks you for this bill. I also want to say, because there was a cancellation for one of your witnesses, we got a pinch hit last minute addition. So let's hear from the proponents, and then there is one favorable with amendment. So Mercedes Pellet, you have up to 5 minutes as the lead proponent from Heart for Animals. Welcome to EHE. You need to unmute yourself, though.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be able to explain and give my oral testimony. I am a retired registered veterinary technician, and I am the development director for Heart for Animals in Garrett County. We applied for our first spay-neuter grant from the Maryland Department of Agriculture in 2015. And since then, we have performed 2,980 surgeries. And our county's poverty rate is 13%. And this is revised from the 2010 census. The 2020 has not yet been tabulated. There is an important correlation between the poverty rate and the urgency with which we see the extension of the spay-neuter fund. It has to do with reproduction. Cats and dogs that are not owned but are considered barn cats or community dogs follow their natural instincts to reproduce. Female dogs go into heat twice a year. Female cats are induced ovulators, which means that the act of breeding stimulates the production of eggs and the release of eggs from the ovaries. And female cats have multiple heat cycles during the breeding season. So what this means in actual numbers, and I have to really stress this, is that one female cat and her female offspring can have up to 5,000 kittens in 7 years. One female dog and her offspring can have 500 puppies. And our counties, and I have to tell you, our county's cat and dog owners who live below the poverty line do not have the funds to pay for the surgeries, even at Heart's greatly reduced rates. One of the reasons I joined Heart for Animals after I retired was because kittens kept arriving during kitten season, which begins in May, by the hundreds in laundry baskets. People were finding them in the woods, in the streets, outside houses, barns. And I have to tell you that if we do not have something to provide them with just no cost spay-neuter surgeries, they will continue to reproduce. You can one of the things, if you can imagine, if you have a male cat and a female cat, you will, within a very short time, have a colony of 60 cats. So bear that in mind as you contemplate the extension of this fund. On behalf of our nonprofit organization, which was created to save the animals from euthanasia at our county shelter, and our beloved county and the animals we live to protect, I beg you to support the extension of the Maryland Spay Neuter Fund. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope my words have reached your wonderful ears.
Thank you so much, Ms. Pellet, for your testimony and for what you do to protect animals in Garrett County. Next witness will be Becky Robinson from Alley Cat Allies. Welcome, Ms. Robinson.
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much. To the chair and to the members, I didn't quite catch, is there any opposition to this bill?
There is one witness with favorable with amendments.
Okay.
There's no opposition, so you don't have to take all of your 2.5 minutes.
I feel very confident that everyone here listening and participating knows what spay and neuter is, and that it's needed. And so I just have a few comments. I really want to heed what the chair said at the top of the meeting, which is, I just want to make a couple of points. Now, Alley Cat Allies is an international organization, but we're based in Maryland. So this is our headquarters, and we've been working in Maryland for very good. Love the picture. We've been working here for 31 years, and we have conducted all kinds of programs, spay neuter programs, mostly all free spay neuter programs. And we work with veterinarians and we work with shelters. And this is an issue that is really clear when Delegate Lehman said the numbers. There's still a huge need, and we need to close that gap. We need to close that gap for people who they just don't understand, and they don't have the money to take their animals to a veterinarian and pay sometimes $500 to $1,000 for a spay or a neuter. And I just want to say, when we have held these events, people come running. Volunteers bring us cats. They volunteer their time to drive. They don't even get reimbursed for their mileage. And whenever we have had spay neuter days or spay neuter events, people take advantage of them. And we really want to get those numbers down. We have 35,000 supporters in Maryland. We, of course, support and ask you to support H146. Really, what you've done here with the Spay Neuter Fund is Maryland, we think, is on the cutting edge. You are a leader, and I want you to know that. I think that it's very impressive what's been done in your state, and I hope other states heed what you've done, because you should be very, very proud. I don't think there's anything else, unless Delegate Lehman, did I forget anything? So let me know if there's any questions or whatever, but thank you for your time. Thank you for taking up this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thanks to all of you, the thousands who support Alley Cat Allies. And next, so it was supposed to be Catherine Evans from Rude Ranch Animal Rescue, and she was going to have to cancel. So Lisa Radoff was willing to pinch hit at the very last second, even though she was signed up as only written. So Ms. Radoff with Maryland Votes for Animals, if you could just briefly share your testimony, just super briefly though.
Chair Kagan, Muzi, when I saw the picture, members of EHE, thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today. I love being a pinch hitter for Delegate Lehman, and thank her so much for introducing this important bill. Maryland Votes for Animals was one of the key players in getting this bill passed. This committee is part of the reason that Maryland was the first in the country to have a program like this that saves so many lives of cats and dogs, preventing euthanasia. The sunset is September 30th of 2022. We are grateful that Delegate Lehman agreed to amend the bill. As I am a member of the Spay and Neuter Advisory Board that makes the recommendations for these grants, I'm glad, and our organization is glad, that they will be involved in setting the fees by the pet food companies and reporting back to the Maryland legislature. So we're requesting a favorable report. Without much more ado, thank you again. Thanks to Delegate Lehman, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Radoff, for your advocacy and for joining us at the last second. Favorable amendment, we have Morgan Beach with Pet Food Institute. Is Morgan Beach here? There you go. You have up to 2.5 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you. Chair Pinsky, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I am Morgan Beach, representing the Pet Food Institute, the voice of U.S. cat and dog food manufacturers. PFI commends Maryland for the great success of the spay and neuter program at its current funding level and supports an extension of the program at the $100 fee level. But we cannot support and do not believe the data supports a tax increase or a need for additional funds. The program has reduced euthanasia rates by 55%, animal shelter intakes by 1.3%, and incoming strays by 12.1%. At the same time, grant application numbers have remained flat. According to the Maryland Department of Agriculture, the spay and neuter grants program is currently well-funded and operating as designed and envisioned, and there is no need currently to increase fees at this time. From FY 2015 to FY 2019, the fund collected 20% more than it expended, approximately $800,000. Income was at $4.4 million, while $3.6 million in grants were provided. Pet food manufacturers already pay a $50 per product registration fee to Maryland. Additionally, the current $100 per product spay and neuter tax generates $1 million per year, the highest pet food tax in the nation. The tax is applied to every cat and dog food product on the shelf. Each product size and each unique protein formula all pay the tax, easily adding up to $1,600 per product. The tax paid to Maryland account for 10% of pet food manufacturers' cumulative budgets for all taxes and fees across the nation, a significant share for a single state. The tax increase, if enacted, would reduce pet food registrations in Maryland, limit consumer choices, and impact households requiring unique diet formulations for their pet. This will also further reduce pet food sales in brick and mortar stores in a difficult economic time. We urge the committee to extend the program for 10 years at the current successful funding level of $100 per product and reject attempts for an unnecessary and burdensome tax increase solely bared by pet food manufacturers. Thank you for the opportunity to share our views, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Beach, for your testimony. That was educational. I see no questions. I thought there was a question from a colleague earlier, but seeing none, that completes the hearing on House Bill 146. Delegate Lehman, witnesses, thank you so much. The next bill is House Bill 94. And colleagues, if we were confused, that was the order that the pile was given to me, and in no way is disrespectful of wonderful Vice Chair Delegate Stein or this bill. So House Bill 94 is Environment Water Quality Revolving Loan Fund, uses of fund. And Delegate Stein, it's always good to see you. Welcome to EHE. Following you, we've got Robert Sherman with the American Forest Foundation and Kate Carr with the Nature Conservancy. Welcome, Delegate Stein.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice Chair and Mr. Chair and committee members. This is a bill that would expand the uses of the loan guarantee function under the state's water quality revolving loan fund. Right now, MDU can use the loan fund for a number of purposes. One of which is to guarantee bonds, notes, or other loans issued by a local government for the purpose of financing the cost of a wastewater facility. Now, EPA has said that this loan fund guarantee can be used for projects beyond wastewater facility projects, such as green infrastructure and non-point source projects, provided they improve water quality. So during the interim, I worked with MDE to come up with the language in the bill, and MDE said that the bill's language clarifies its authority and conforms to federal law. So these changes would allow the loan guarantee function to assist projects such as tree plantings, forest management, and other environmental improvement projects that have a water quality benefit. That would make these projects more affordable. And also, as you'll hear from the witnesses that will be coming after me, they would also these are the types of projects that are able to tap into the voluntary carbon market. So it would, through no expense of the state, allow leveraging of private capital for these types of projects. So with that, I urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate Stein. Mr. Sherman, you have up to 5 minutes.
Great, thank you so much. Chair Pinsky, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee, I first want to thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. My name is Robert Sherman. I'm the State Policy Manager at the American Forest Foundation. We are a conservation organization that works with family landowners to promote stewardship and protect our nation's forests. The American Forest Foundation strongly endorses HB 94. The bill would provide a technical fix that would allow for the marshaling of private capital from institutional markets to make critical investments in forest conservation in Maryland, helping to achieve statewide carbon reduction goals while enhancing the state's clean water, all without costing taxpayers. Our organization, in partnership with the Nature Conservancy, is currently piloting a program called the Family Forest Carbon Program, which would allow small family landowners to access carbon markets and provide them with financial incentives to implement conservation practices that sequester carbon and protect clean water. Maryland alone has nearly 150,000 private and family forest owners with 1.2 million acres of forest. Maryland's forest-based sector provides employment for over 6,000 people and generates a payroll of over $300 million. Maryland's forests also provide a massive clean air and water benefit, which, while difficult to directly quantify, are critical to the health of Maryland communities and the state's economy. To scale the Family Forest Carbon Program in Maryland, which would bring millions of dollars to rural families, protect water systems, and reduce the state's carbon footprint, there is a need for upfront private capital, which our organization plans to raise from the green bond market. With the passage of HB 94, Maryland's State Revolving Fund program could guarantee a bond or other financial agreement for an entity such as the Family Forest Carbon Program. Guarantee support will drive down bond financing costs, making it economically feasible for the first time for small family landowners to participate in voluntary carbon markets at scale and jumpstart forest conservation work on the ground. The American Forest Foundation and the Nature Conservancy believe that the effective expansion of the Family Forest Carbon Program into Maryland would create stable forest sector jobs, sequester over 600,000 tons of carbon, and result in the improved health and resilience of roughly 23,000 acres of family forest lands across the state. We also believe that in passing this bill, the state of Maryland could become a model for other states looking to expand investment in their rural communities, in forest health, and in long-term climate solutions, all without costing the state. So on behalf of the American Forest Foundation, I'd like to thank Delegate Stein for the introduction of this bill. Look forward to answering any questions that members of the committee may have. Thank you both so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman, for your testimony. Ms. Kerr, welcome to EHE.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all today in support of House Bill 94. For the record, my name is Kate Kerr, and I'm here representing the Nature Conservancy. Put simply, House Bill 94 expands the types of projects that could benefit from Maryland's Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund, or SRF. The SRF provides loans and loan guarantees to local governments and other qualifying entities to finance projects that deliver clean water. Currently in our state, the loan guarantee portion of the program has been applied only to wastewater treatment plant upgrades. Maryland's SRF is a key tool at the state's disposal to achieve our clean water goals. As this committee knows well, we have a lot of work to do to meet those goals, especially in the face of climate change, and we need as many solutions as possible. House Bill 94 will make the SRF a more effective tool by enabling county and municipal governments and other qualifying entities to use the loan guarantee facility to finance other types of projects beyond wastewater plant upgrades, such as stormwater projects, watershed protection and management projects, and forest management projects. These types of projects deliver clean water to Maryland citizens and its ecosystems, and they also provide critical co-benefits like improving air quality, enhancing wildlife habitat, and fighting climate change. Critically, expanding the SRF loan guarantees use increases opportunities for private capital to finance new and innovative water quality projects and implement an increased number of these projects in our state. Along those lines, I'd also like to emphasize that House Bill 94 will not detract from the traditional SRF loan or grant capacity, nor will it require any taxpayer money. For these reasons, the Nature Conservancy urges a favorable report on House Bill 94. You also have my written testimony. Thank you for your time and your consideration of this bill.
Thank you, Ms. Kerr. We appreciate your testimony. And there is an added witness that the committee facilitator has flagged for me, Rohan Agarwal, a 7th grader at Howard County Public Schools. Mr. Agarwal, if you want to unmute and show us your face, if you can come on video. Here we go.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify. My name is Rohan Agarwal. I'm a 7th grade student at Clarksville Middle School, and I am in favor of House Bill 94. I'm in favor of this bill because it will allow the people of Maryland better access to good water quality and provide organizations with the funds they need. The Chesapeake Bay Commission is working towards bay restoration, and this bill will speed up the process and allow them better funds for the project. This will not just benefit humans in Maryland, but also the organisms that live in our ecosystems. As a 7th grade student, I really love the outdoors, and this bill will give necessary funds to improve water quality for organisms and humans. I'm involved with and know people that are involved with the National Audubon Society. Audubon is working to save birds and track birds that live throughout Maryland and the entire nation. Birds need good water quality, and this bill will provide funds they need that the birds need. This bill will provide the necessary funds to speed up projects which help birds. We need House Bill 94 to provide these organizations with more funds so they can save our resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Agarwal. You did a great job. I have a quick question for you, which is, how did you hear about this bill and decide to sign up to testify?
Well, I'm doing a service learning project for my school on advocacy. So I went to the website and I made an account and I started reading through the list of bills, and this one interested me.
Well, that's fantastic. Give props to everybody at Clarksville Middle School, because they're obviously doing something right. So thank you for being with us. I see no questions from colleagues, so that completes the hearing on House Bill 94. Thank you, Delegate Stein. Passing it back to Chair Pinsky.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you very much. Before I go to Delegate Rosenberg, let me just mention to the committee, we will have a voting session tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. The current 2.0 is coming back to us, so 9 a.m. in committee chambers. Okay, welcome, Delegate Rosenberg. Haven't seen you in a while. We have HB 307, Maryland Technology Internship Program, Qualifications for Participants, and Delegate Rosenberg will be followed by Christine Rutsan. Welcome, Sandy.
Good to be with you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair. Good to be Zooming with you, not across the street. Instead of being with you across the street. This bill would broaden the scope of a very successful Maryland Technology Internship Program that this committee is familiar with. The Technology Internship Program provides an opportunity for students with an interest in high tech or tech to get an internship with a for-profit company under existing law, to get their foot in the door and hopefully stay with a company here in Maryland and assist broaden our tech industry in the process. What the bill does is provide that nonprofit tech space could also be the place where students do their internship, broaden the scope, provide some assistance to those nonprofits who are tech-based. Number one, that's what the bill would do. In addition, would broaden the scope of the bill so that the minimum grade requirement, GPA, is a 2.5. The experience of the great folks at UMBC, whom you'll be hearing from Christine in a moment, is that they have had to say no to qualified applicants because they didn't have a 3.0, and that a 2.5 would be still a reasonable floor. And Steve Jobs is among those who would qualify under the bill but don't qualify under existing law. Bottom line, program has worked. This would broaden the scope. Ask for a favorable report. And thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Rosenberg. Ms. Rutsan?
Thank you, Delegate Rosenberg, also. And good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Christine Routson, and I have the honor of administering the Maryland Technology Internship Program, also known as MTIP, on behalf of the state of Maryland. The program actually began in August of 2018 and offers financial assistance by way of supporting matching intern funds to technology-based businesses along with state and local agencies, really to, again, increase, as Delegate Rosenberg said, the number of technical interns in the state with the goal of course, retaining them. To date, MTIP has supported over 600 internships across the state and at nearly 150 unique organizations, and also in multiple industries from cyber to manufacturing to biotech. The list really goes on. This is a tremendous start, but I'm really here today to support HB 307 because of the two components that Delegate Rosenberg stated, which is to allow the nonprofit sector to be a part of the MTIP program and also to lower slightly the GPA threshold for students to be part of the program. Nonprofit organizations have a real need for technical talent from graphic design, web development, app, data, scientist type of students. Technology has merged in all industries, all sectors, and that really does include nonprofits. By including nonprofit organizations in MTIP, we will allow us to build a stronger technical student base, student intern base, and future workforce for nonprofit organizations, helping with their mission and also just work in our community. Through the program, we also believe very strongly on being inclusive environment that supports all students, all technical students and industries. The current 3.0 GPA requirement presents an equity issue. As we all know, one bad semester can affect a student's opportunity really to get an internship in this program. High-level technical courses can be incredibly difficult for students. By lowering the GPA just slightly, we can better support a broader group of students in these career-changing experiences and provide our employers in the program with also a greater pool of talent across the state. On LinkedIn, actually just last week, as I was preparing for this hearing, there was a post by Ben Sichi, who was one of the former system engineers for NASA Goddard, and he wrote, I got a 2.4 GPA my first semester of college. Thought I could not cut it out for engineering. Today, I've landed 2 spacecrafts on Mars, and I'm now designing one for the moon. STEM is hard for everyone. Grades ultimately are not what matters. Curiosity and perseverance matter. HB 307 will lift recruiting barriers for our organizations, specifically nonprofits, and also help us broaden the talent pool that gets this opportunity.
Ms. Routson, you're going to have to wrap up.
Yep. With that, I just ask for your favorable review. Thank you for your consideration.
And thank you. Questions for the sponsor or the witness? Seeing none and no other witnesses, and I don't think any opposition, thank you for your patience and your testimony. Thank you both.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, good seeing you. We're going to move on to HB 320, followed by HB 394. Delegate Smith. First one is having to do with the longitudinal data system, transfer of student data. Welcome to EHE, Delegate Smith.
Hello, Mr. Chair. I'm glad I'm here on time for this bill. Thank you for that. And thank you, Madam Vice Chair, and all of the members of the committee for having me. Again, I'm here for the record, Delegate Stephanie Smith, here to present House Bill 320. Just to give a little grounding for folks, the current law, which is the 2018 Career Preparation Act, it established a requirement for the Maryland Higher Education Commission, MHEC, to collect and provide data and it also established the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center, or MLDS, as I'll refer to it from here. And what that act required is for MLDS to collect data as it pertains to professional occupational licenses, and they would get that information from the Department of Labor and the Department of Health. It also required vocational certificate data from our community colleges, and also industry certifications from a national certifier that receives state support. So what this bill does is it fixes a couple of legal and procedural issues. As I noted, the 2018 law requires this data to go first to EMHEC, and then for EMHEC to transfer that data to MLDS as its final destination. So MLDS and EMHEC and conversations amongst themselves said it made a little more sense to skip that middleman and to reduce exposure of the data by just having that data collection go directly to MLDS instead of having EMHEC as the middle agency transmitter. So the bill would eliminate that middle man function for EMHEC and pull them out of that, as was their desire. But it also does a couple of other things. The Maryland Department of Health was concerned that they didn't have the statutory permission to transfer personally identifying information. So this bill clarifies that they can directly transmit that information to MLDS and cleans that up because there was some ambiguity there. This bill also clarifies that the Secretary of the Department of Health is not really responsible for the transmission of the data, but that the health occupation boards that they work with are really responsible for transmitting the data. So it just clears up that discrepancy. And then lastly, there was a concern that the governing board for MLDS did not have representation of people that were coming from the health occupation board professional experience. So it does expand, access to ensure someone from that world is sitting on the MLDS board of directors. So that's what this bill does. I just want to, quickly note that this bill does not create new data. It simply ensures that the data that's transmitted doesn't have to go through EMHEC, reduces how many people are really interacting with that data as such. And it also ensures that the Department of Health is able to defer to their occupational boards to transmit the data and have representation in that community on the MLDS board of advisors. So I do hope with that clarification of what the bill does to get your favorable support for House Bill 320, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Delegate Smith. There is no opposition. USM, Dr. Shapiro has written a letter of support. I think it's a helpful clarification. So we're going to keep it simple. That concludes the hearing on
Mr.
20.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Senator Riley, I apologize.
No problem. Delegate Smith, thanks for bringing this bill forward. There was opposition on the House floor. Was there any opposition presented to the committee?
Oh, hello, Senator. No, sir.
Any special reason that 35 people voted against it?
Me on the floor? I think because there was some concern that people thought that, one, this was opening up new data. And so our committee chairperson made it clear this isn't about new data being created. And I think that folks also thought that it was creating personally identified information. Actually, MLDS already collects personally identified information, but I think people presume because, quite frankly, those words would give someone, a layman, the perspective that this means that someone's personal individual information would be broadcast to the public, and that is not the function of MLDS. They do analysis of cohorts of folks, and they do not ever publicly identify anyone, nor could they internally individually identify anyone's information. I believe there's only, I think, 4 folks within MLDS proper that are able to access the server that even would give any access to that. And that's not allowed to be shared within the broader MLDS or also shared publicly. It's really about cohort analysis and tracking. But I think, quite frankly, that term of art, I think, made some people think that it was doing something it wasn't doing, no matter how many times our chairman relayed that it did not do that.
Yeah, well, this committee many years ago helped develop the longitudinal data system.
Oh, thank you.
The leadership of Chairman. I was involved with that discussion, and I thank you for your answer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. That concludes the hearing on that bill. Let's go to Delegate Smith's second bill, 394, Public Schools Fee for Summer School Courses Prohibitions. We'll hear from Delegate Smith, followed by Crystal Williams and Grace Rusing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Delegate Stephanie Smith here to present House Bill 394. This is a bill that has passed out of the House. This is the third session in a row that it's passed out of the House. And the theory around this bill is simple. The Maryland State Constitution guarantees every young person attending public school a free and adequate education. So this bill says that if you've taken a course, you've been unsuccessful completing that course, and this course is necessary to successfully, obtain a graduate, to successfully graduate from school, that this course should not be a course for which you're charged for, because fundamentally, if we're supposed to provide free and adequate education and someone is taking this course again because they were unable to successfully, pass the course, it seems at odds with our collective concerns around education equity to have such a hodgepodge of costs across our state, ranging from free to several hundreds of dollars per course. This prohibition on summer school fees has nothing to do with enrichment courses just to get ahead. This is simply about a core course someone needs to successfully graduate that they have attempted to pass, and unfortunately, for whatever reason, we're able to do so. One of the reasons why I've always thought this was an incredibly important kind of educational equity matter, but in light of the education that's been provided to young people across our state with no fault of our education system, but just the pandemic obviously posed many challenges, it seems almost even more perverse to charge people or not charge people for summer school moving forward. So I do hope that with your careful consideration to gain a favorable report for House Bill 394. And I thank you for your time.
Let's go to Ms. Williams. Are you with us, Ms. Williams?
I don't see Ms. Williams. I don't think she's joined us, but
Ms. Grace Rusing.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Grace Rusing, and I'm an attorney with the Office of the Public Defender, and we support House Bill 394. And I'd like to personally thank Delegate Smith for this important bill. I became involved in this issue in 2018 when I learned that it cost our students over $350 to attend one summer school class in Prince George's County Schools. Our attorneys represent many students statewide that want to attend summer school to make up for lost credits, and they can't attend simply because their parents can't afford the tuition. The majority of our school districts charge a tuition, which places summer school out of reach for our clients. And as it said, it should be a free system of education, but it turns out into a pay-to-play system. Charging fees and tuitions is particularly harmful for indigent students because the sad fact is the majority, all of our juvenile clients live in poverty, and their family's inability to pay summer school tuition hinders their ability to graduate. I'd also just like to note that the courses that we're talking about, these are hard courses. We're talking about Algebra 1, we're talking about biology, very weighty classes. We're also talking about, for our students, being at a reading grade level way under what they should be. So you've got a student that's trying to get through English 10, reading on a 4th grade level, which can be very difficult. And I think the point is for these students, many of them need this second opportunity to the curriculum. Try as hard as they can. Sometimes they need a second opportunity at the curriculum in order to pass. And their parents' ability or inability to pay for the tuition should not be the determining factor as to whether they have the opportunity to attend summer school. So that's why we are in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rusing. Questions for the sponsor or the witness? Questions? Seeing none, that completes the hearing. There is one unfavorable written from Montgomery County Board of Education. So you can look at that at your leisure. But that concludes the hearing on HB 394. Thank you, Delegate Smith, for your 2 bills.
Thank you. I hope I was brief enough. I'm trying to meet the culture.
You were great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to HB 333, Delegate Clark, Marine Contractor Licenses, Performance of Services. Start with Delegate Clark, followed by Shannon and Nizal. And the only unfavorable is written from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Delegate Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my pleasure to be here today. Just for the record, my name's Gerald Clark. I'm the delegate from 29C, Calvert and St. Mary's County. And the bill I'm presenting to you today is House Bill 333, and it's a marine contractor's license, performance of service, licensing requirement fees. It came to my attention a couple of years ago, and this bill, House Bill 1533 last year, and passed out of committee and passed the House unanimously, but it got caught up in the early end of the session with the COVID. It came to my attention a couple of years ago from the Public Works Director in Calvert County that they were experiencing some extra costs and time to do some fairly simple tasks around the edge of the water, and Calvert County is pretty much surrounded by water on both sides, the Chesapeake Bay and the Patuxent River, that they weren't able to use their Department of Public Works to do some of the work because it required a marine contractor's license for some pretty minimal styles of work. So he asked me if I would look into adding the county and municipal public works department or employees to have the same ability as the state employees and DNR to be able to do some de minimis repairs and actions, AE things like maintenance and repair, tidal, impound dikes, agricultural drainage ditches, roadside ditches, outlets for roadside drainage ditches, activity and other activities that was deemed de minimis by the Marine Contractors Licensing Board, which I figured would be a pretty reasonable bill to put in for them. The Marine Contracting Licensing Board is the ones that decide what are de minimis jobs to be done by the folks that don't need a marine contractor's license. The state employees have been able to do this now for quite a while. We would like to add the county employees and the municipal employees to this bill. Well, not to the bill, but to the ordinance that allows the state employees to do it now. I have a letter from Calvert County commissioners and St. Mary's County commissioners, and I believe from MACO, their Parks and Rec folks that are in favor of this bill. We do have one letter of opposition from Chesapeake Bay Foundation, which you'll hear from later. We've discussed this a few times back and forth. I'm kind of a person that believes in the glass is half full and not half empty and not empty all the time. I believe in the ability of our county employees and the supervisions in our counties, because I happen to come out of county government from elected board of county commissioners. I don't disagree with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation's opposition. I would not verbally argue with them. I just think, yeah, we need to give the counties an opportunity to prove themselves that they can handle this job and save the taxpayers some money and be able to speed up the process. With that, Mr. Chairman, that's my presentation of 333.
Thank you, Delegate Clark. Let's go to Shannon and Nazal from Calvert County Parks and Rec.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Chair Pinsky, Vice Chair Kagan, and committee members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all today. For the record, I'm Shannon Nazal, and I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation for Calvert County. In addition to representing the interests of Calvert County, I'm also speaking on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties Parks and Recreation Affiliate, or MACPRA. Calvert County and MACPRA are in full support of House Bill 333 as amended. As Delegate Clark mentioned, House Bill 1533 passed unanimously in the House in 2020 session with no amendments before the pandemic hit. This year, we have worked closely with the sponsor, Delegates Delegate Clark, the Maryland Department of Environment, and the Chesapeake Bay Foundation to come up with a resolve that meets the needs of all organizations involved, and this current bill also passed through the House unanimously. As the active legislation currently allows, counties and municipalities are the only agencies that do not enjoy the privileges of exemption from marine contractor license requirements, which puts a great deal of financial burden on local governments, as well as an issue of timely rectification of safety concerns. With this current bill, it allows agencies such as mine throughout the state to complete repairs and perform routine maintenance without a license. As an example, our agency had a floating dock vandalized at one of our piers and non-motorized boat launches. This repair could have been completed with materials easily purchased at a hardware store by current staff. Instead, Calvert County was forced to utilize a marine contractor for this work, spending over $2,400 for this de minimis repair. It's not the goal of local governments to negatively impact the Chesapeake Bay and its watersheds. As Calvert County is surrounded on 3 sides by the waters of the Chesapeake Bay and Patuxent River, it is a shared goal to protect our precious watershed. These waters offer so much to our communities, environment, and the overall health of our region. We understand the need for proper vetting of those who are doing intrusive work in our watersheds and the need for proper licensure. Parks and recreation agencies are avid protectors of our environment through programs, outreach, and conservation. The intent of this bill is to allow agencies to meet the needs of our communities in a more fiscally responsible and efficient manner to complete work that has minimal risk to human health and environment. Passing of this bill would allow local government agencies to complete routine maintenance and repairs that are low risk without the need to obtain a licensed marine contractor, and provides a compromise on the licensure itself by lifting the fees for local government agencies. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your favorable report.
Thank you. Question for Delegate Clark or Calvert County Parks and Rec? Seeing none, there's no oral unfavorable. As mentioned, you may look in your file for unfavorable testimony. Okay, let's move on to Delegate Clark's second bill, Natural Resources Waters of the State Mobile Locator Application, 800 HB 800. The floor is yours, Delegate Clark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I did in the packet, I put in a little bit of a PowerPoint printout for you. And the purpose of this bill is to require DNR to develop a mobile app for use by individuals on the waters of the state to aid in the determination of location at real time. And you can see they put up the app. Next page. You can see the purpose is to be able to find natural oyster bars, Yates bars, submerged vegetation protection zones, pound nets, shell fisheries, aqua leases. I'm not going to read them all to you. You can see them there, the purpose for the app. Next page. This is the app out of Virginia that I came across and came up with this idea from about 2 years ago. I worked with DNR to try to get it done without legislation, and I was advised by one of the gentlemen at DNR it probably would be better to go ahead and put in a bill to try to jumpstart this app. Next page. These are some of the different areas of the bay that this app would be able to help you find and help you understand. You can see there's a lot of different zones that it would show and give you the ability to understand some of the oyster grounds and the lease aquaculture leased areas, as well as different oyster bars and condemned areas and private dredging permits. And next page. You can see here, this is some of the public grounds where it shows you down around Chris Field. It's below the Maryland border where some of the stuff is. Next page. This like crab sanctuary and condensation zones you'll be able to see on this app. Next page. Different harvest areas for oysters and crabs and things like that. Next page. Then it would also give you the ability to look at different regulations for fishing and crabbing and mandatory harvest reports and all that kind of stuff would be built in it. But it would also give you thank you, that's the final page, I believe. They give you the ability to, as a recreational water person or recreational boater, would give you the ability to find a fishing spot that you did well at and pin it on your phone. It all works off your cell phone, and it would give you real-time locations of where you're at and the ability to go back and forth. And I think it's just that this is in its infancy, that an app like this can be built and continue to be built. Originally, the fiscal note was fairly high estimate. With doing some research and talking to folks in Virginia, they came back and said that each for Android and digital phones, it was cost them about $20,000 each to first put it on the platform. And then there's about a $5,000 a year cost to maintain the app in the system. The DNR had said in the House hearing that they were going to be able to blend this into their Compass program that they're working on now. And therefore they've given their support for the bill, gotten support from CBF, Coastal Conservation Association, DNR, and actually, if you haven't gotten it, a letter from the Farm Bureau endorsing this legislation. With that, that's my report on HB 800.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions, Delegate. Let's start with the Vice Chair Kagan, followed by Senator Carrozza.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Delegate Clark, thank you for your presentation. I have two things. One is for those who may be watching and don't know, including me, what is Yates? And second,
what is what?
It was in your testimony, Yates, Y-A-T-E-S?
Yates bars are historical oyster bars.
Okay. Didn't know. Thank you. Rockville and Gaithersburg doesn't have those. So thank you for that. Okay. And second, last year I had a bill on clamming, and the clammer people wanted maps and clarification. We were looking for distance and parameters. And DNR told me last year that they were working on a map and an app and exactly this, and no legislation, because we're working on it already. How come a year later the story is unchanged? And now you're saying we do need legislation. Did they working on it or making any progress at all?
I'm not sure, but clam bars traditionally tend to move around. They're not normally in a fixed location. I know that DNR has been working on a system they call their Compass system, but I don't believe it's as sophisticated as this. My discussions with them is they have conveyed to me that they see this system that the way that Virginia has set up as to being a very good beginning, but they have ideas to be able to even make it better. And after 2 years of trying to work with them and get it moving, one of the liaisons from DNR told me, well, maybe we ought to, I tried to put it on a bill last year and I didn't get the bill out in time. But he said it would probably be the best thing to get it in legislation.
Okay. Well,
can move with it.
Thank you, Delegate Clark. I'm assuming that Mr. McKittrick is watching, and maybe if he and I can catch it. I'm a little confused by that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
And if Mr. McKittrick is not watching, I'm going to tell his boss.
He does a good job.
Always entertaining. Always entertaining.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Clark, thank you for this bill. And as I was going through the bill file and reading the testimony, I wanted to ask you, there was one issue that wasn't brought up, but I think it could have an added benefit, but you're closer to the issue than I am at this point. It's boat safety, in that we have an issue, as you know, I represent Ocean City and the coastal bays of 3 lower shore counties. And we have had an issue with boat safety, and it started, and part of it is, I think, some of these boaters not knowing the waters, especially tourists and first-time boat renters that come in from out of state. Do you see, is this an added benefit of this mobile app?
I believe it could be. This app, as what I have here, is mainly for the Chesapeake Bay itself, not necessarily the coastal bays. But I mean, that's a natural progression, that it would be able to blend over into the coastal bays, and they would be able to, you know, to put some boater safety things in there and markers as to where different things are on this app. I would think it would be. I know they have the data. It's just a matter of building it into the platform.
Well, I appreciate that, and I did want to raise it. Sometimes the coastal bays are do not obviously receive the same attention as Chesapeake Bay, so we want to keep them at the forefront as well. So thank you for that.
I apologize for that oversight. I look at the bay every time I go over to Ocean City, which is right often. So the next time I won't forget, and I apologize.
No. My point is, it's an added benefit I think we could have with this mobile app.
I agree with you 100%. And I was going to try to make an effort to come and see each one of you and show you this app, but the way the session has worked this year and with all the COVID stuff, I just felt it was better to give you the ability to download it and look at it yourself. And, you know, better safe than sorry. And hopefully I would ask that maybe that you all would approve this so that we could get a vote in the Senate and move it on forward.
Thank
and
you.
With that, I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for joining us, Delegate Clark. We appreciate your testimony. We're going to go to Delegate Boyce, HB 400, Public Schools Enrollment Location. She will be followed by Andrew Tress. And Delegate Boyce, welcome to Education, Health, and Environment.
Thank you so much, Senator, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much, committee members. For the record, I am Regina T. Boyce, delegate of the 43rd District, testifying on HB 400, Public School Enrollment Location Continuity. HB 400 prohibits a county superintendent from withdrawing a child from enrollment in a school that the child is attending due to the child's participation in an educational program that is located in a detention facility as state-owned and the state-operated facility that accommodates more than 25 youth, or any other facility operated primarily for the detention of youth who are determined to be delinquent. In November 2019, on a visit to both the Baltimore City Juvenile Justice Service and Evening Reporting Center, I discovered a concerning issue. Youth entering the Baltimore Center were being withdrawn from school upon the transfer of their school records to the Baltimore Center from the school system. The Department of Juvenile Services provides educational programs through MSDE at the center. These centers are not schools. The additional concern is the barrier this transfer creates. Resources at the center are used to re-enroll students back into school, which requires several pieces of documentation, a birth certificate, and 2 or 3 proofs of residency. And this is re-enrollment into the school the youth was just enrolled in, anywhere from 15 to 30 days prior. According to the Department of Juvenile Services in FY18, youth detained at the Baltimore Center in the juvenile system on average had a stay of 18 days. There were 661 youth admitted to detention pre-trial. On any given day, there are about 32 youth charged as juveniles at the Baltimore Center. A majority of the youth are released from detention back into the community. Also in FY18, youth detained at the Baltimore Center as adults on average had a stay of 149 days. 141 youth charged as adults are admitted to the Baltimore Center pre-transfer. On any given day, about 57 youth are charged as adults. 45% of the youth charged as adults are released back to the community. This is a rough total of 89 youth who may not be heading back to school. Youth who come into the system tend to have high absenteeism. Upon entering the system, these youth can receive needed resources for themselves and their parents to address the underlying issues regarding the absenteeism, as well as the underlying issues that have brought them to the center. Note that this does not occur as it should, because the resources are then being used to mainly re-enroll the youth into school. This is a state issue. This is not necessarily a Baltimore City issue. In the second year, of course, of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, no child should be kept from receiving a world-class education, even those who may have taken the wrong path. The simple correction of this issue will ensure these youth aren't left behind, and to have access to the Blueprint for Maryland's Future provision for world-class competitive education. I would like to mention that this bill actually passed last year out of the Ways and Means Committee and the House at 132-0 and as HB 1188. So with that, I really thank you for your time and your consideration, and I would urge a favorable report again, please, on this side of the House, or the other House. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chair, you're muted, but I have to say I love Delegate Boyce's subtlety. And on behalf of her senator who's not here at the moment, thank you.
I know.
Okay, is Andrew Tress with us? I have Mr. Tress, and then we'll take questions if you can stick around, Delegate Boyce.
Great, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Andrew Tress with the Department of Juvenile Services, and I'm here to provide information on House Bill 400. Delegate Boyce explained everything very well. I couldn't have said it better myself, but should the committee have any questions from the department, I am here and happy to answer them.
Great. We appreciate your brevity. Questions for the delegate or the department? Well, you folks got off easy. Very impressive testimony, or maybe that it's come here once or twice before. But as you know, the end of last session was a little complicated.
Yes,
so,
it was.
Thank you for your testimony and your patience. Thank you for joining us, Delegate Boyce.
Thank you so much for your time and your consideration. Have a great day.
Thank you. That concludes the hearing on that legislation. Delegate Solomon, are you with us? There you are. We have HB 487, School Construction Pedestrian Safety Plans, School Pedestrian Safety Act. We will hear from Delegate Solomon, and then we'll hear from Joseph Jakuta, Christy Daphne, and Luca Uderwald. Welcome, Delegate Solomon.
Thank you, Senator Pinsky. Good to see you all, Mr. Chair, my esteemed colleague, the Vice Chair from Montgomery County. Good to see you as well. For the record, Delegate Jared Solomon, and thank you for the opportunity to present on House Bill 487. And I will just say, unfortunately, we lost Luca. He is a student who's been a real great advocate on pedestrian safety issues, and he had to go take an exam. The world of virtual schooling. So, I want to just be brief because I think, our advocates will give a lot of great background on this. This is an issue, frankly, that we've had to face all too often in my district, and I think in many of your districts around the state as well. Really heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching stories of students who have been killed, to and from school in pedestrian safety accidents or crashes, a lot of near misses. And then on the sort of more mundane side of things, just a lot of frustration that when counties embark on large scale construction projects, communities often feel like there isn't enough input, there isn't enough thought about how we think of our roads as accessible to everybody, not just people in cars. And so, the genesis for this bill came out of work with a lot of really great advocates throughout Montgomery County who have been dealing with this. Our county has changed a lot, obviously, since many of our roads and our transportation networks were built. Many of our neighborhoods look very different now, than they did 40 or 50 years ago. And I think that the need for this piece of legislation has only been heightened by the pandemic, where people have really put a premium on getting outside, leaving their cars behind and really using the built and public spaces that are in their neighborhoods. You can see in my testimony there are a number of statistics that we pulled out. I just wanted to touch on a couple of them. the fall season, when school gets into full swing, tends to be one of the worst for pedestrian safety accidents. As we've seen, of the 3,000 or so pedestrian injuries that have happened in Maryland, almost 600 of them involve children who are below the age of 19, and nearly half of them were hurt, usually walking to or from school. The idea in this bill is pretty straightforward. It's basically saying that if you are a district that is either building a new school or substantially renovating an existing school where you would be adding 100 students or more, you have to have a pedestrian safety plan incorporated as part of the documents and plans that you submit to the IAC. That pedestrian safety plan has to look at essentially the existing capacity for the safe routes to school, that may already be on the books in your community to allow students to walk and bike to school. It's got to look at the potential for expanding school zones, the potential for additional sidewalks or additional bike lanes that may be needed. It's not necessarily saying that they have to be built, but at least there's some sort of a plan. It has to obviously have public and community input. And you have to have some record of that. It can't just be we sent an email out. You have to hold a meeting or actually engage your community. And then there has to be collaboration between the local departments of transportation as well as SHA, obviously, if it involves state roads. Again, we really think this is a smart investment on the front end because a lot of these issues, once the construction's finished and the buildings have been built, they're obviously a lot more expensive to fix than they are to sort of address on the front end. There's just a couple of points I want to make on sort of how we got to this point with the bill. So we introduced this last year in a little bit of a different form. It passed overwhelmingly out of the House, but we actually worked on a compromise with some of our rural jurisdictions. And now Senator Quarterman, who was on the Appropriations Committee last year, he and I worked on this. We obviously know that the one size fits all doesn't work for Maryland. So we split out high density jurisdictions like Montgomery County or Prince George's or Anne Arundel with low density jurisdictions. And, what Senator Quarterman made a really great point about was, take a place like Hagerstown where while Washington County may be overwhelmingly rural, Hagerstown, the city proper, looks a little bit more urban and has these kind of issues that he deals with regularly. So we put a provision in that said essentially exempted low density counties except for areas or municipalities that had over 10,000 people. And working with our council and the folks at DLS last year, we felt like that captured most of the higher density municipalities across the state that could have these kind of an issue. If you had a city like Easton where you have a school in downtown and people are able to walk to and from versus a more rural community where you're not going to have somebody who's walking 10 miles to school. You'll see there is no opposition testimony. Even the transportation builders and the Asphalt Association were actually in favor of it. Usually don't get a lot of favorable testimony from those groups on the bills that I work on. So that was really great to see. And there is a fiscal note. Most of the money comes out of the Transportation Trust Fund for SHA to potentially hire a consultant to work. I think you can see in there that even that number is probably going to be a substantial sum less. The only real money out of the general fund is a minimal expense for the IAC to hire somebody to be the coordinator for reviewing these plans. And with that, would ask for a favorable report, and we'll turn it over to our witnesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Then let's go to Joseph Chikuta from Sierra Club.
Thank you, Chair Pinsky, Vice Chair Kagan, and the rest of the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. My name is Joseph, and I'm the lead volunteer on the Climate Parents of Prince George's campaign, which is a Sierra Club campaign for clean energy schools. In pre-COVID times, one of the highlights of my mornings as I was getting ready to go to work was seeing a train of elementary school children walk past my house. They numbered 3 when they hit my block, and by the time they made it to the end, they were at 7, all cared for by a different set of parents every day. I know that by the time they reached our community school, they were over a dozen, and walking together, getting to know each other, developing a community. It was healthier for the children and encouraged the parents to bond, which fostered even more growth and improvements in our community school. But we have the benefit of living in a neighborhood that was built in 1910 when walking was still the norm. Children in many parts of Prince George's County and elsewhere in Maryland don't have that luxury. I know full well growing up in Northern Maryland how dangerous it was to walk to and from school along US 1 the days that I missed the bus or had to stay late for marching band. But walking and biking to school is not something that's just nice to be able to have. Studies that we cited in our written testimony have shown that the increase in physical activity that comes from walking and biking leads to better health and learning outcomes for the children. Walking and biking reduces the pollution associated with car-based drop-off. For older children, increases the freedom to participate in more activities while easing the burden from transporting children and working parents. It's especially important for the children of the 10% of Marylanders and 15% of Marylanders of color that don't even own a car. Walking and biking to school is important for the health, education, well-being, and personal growth of our students, and HB 487 leads Maryland down the path towards that goal. We encourage you to vote favorably on HB 487. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Jakuda. And finally, Christy Daphnis.
Hello. Thank you to the chair and the vice chair for allowing me to testify today in favor of HB 487. I chair the Montgomery County Pedestrian, Bicycle, and Traffic Safety Advisory Committee, and I'm also on the Montgomery County Council of PTAs as a delegate and cluster coordinator, as well as on its Safe Routes to School Committee. This bill is really critical in providing students across Maryland with options for safe pedestrian and bicycle routes to school. Currently, there's no requirement to plan for pedestrian infrastructure as a condition of state funding or really otherwise. And any planning that is done in this arena is often done much too late to consider some of the community input, if community input is even sought. I think traditionally when schools are thinking through the planning, while there are some mandatory referrals between departments and agencies, the initial planning and design really stops sort of at the edge of the property line. And what this does is it expands the scope of some of the planning and community engagement that needs to be done around the building of new schools or the renovation of the schools. If you're adding students to the school, we want to make sure that they have a place to walk and a place to ride their bike, and that's really integrated into the design and into the plan to provide for safe routes. This bill I would ask that you treat it favorably because it would improve the safety and pedestrian access for students at new or newly renovated schools across the state, allowing for more students to walk or bike to school. It would ensure this community engagement on factors beyond the strict four-wall definition of the school facility itself. The pedestrian facilities and streets on and around the property provide really important connections across the community and really support and embrace this complete neighborhood concept and the complete streets design, which will allow walkability to key institutions and services such as schools and the wraparound services at schools. It will improve cross-jurisdictional coordination, including this holistic planning and integration on infrastructure needs for both state and local roadways within school zones, which is super important. And it will encourage improved stewardship of taxpayer dollars by requiring really thoughtful assessment of new infrastructure. The actions that would be identified during this early planning requirement in the bill and in the approval process will ensure that the capital improvement projects are sort of accounted for, there's accountability, and that they're executed in the most efficient manner. Thank you for your time and for allowing me to testify. I really urge you to consider supporting HB 487 to help improve the safety for our children and for our communities all across the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Daphnis. Are there questions for Delegate Solomon, Mr. Jakuda, or Ms. Daphnis? There are no opponents signed up orally. Two jurisdictions have written testimony. They have a concern, not surprisingly. But if you have questions on the bill, now's the opportunity. Seeing none, then that completes the hearing on House Bill 487. Thank you for visiting us, Dr. Solomon, and the testimony from your advocates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Delegate Horner, 545 Natural Resources Licensing Stamps and Revisions. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Pinsky and Vice Chair Kagan. So happy to see you all. Kevin Hornberger here on behalf of HB 545. This is Natural Resources, Licenses, Permits, Regulations, Certifications, and Digital Electronic. What a title. This bill is very simple and straightforward. I have some props here. So if you're currently going out and let's say you want to hunt waterfowl, you would have to have a hunting license. You would have to have your federal duck stamp. You would have to have your state duck stamp. And then you would also have to have written permission from a property owner. So all of these documents currently exist online using what the DNR calls a platform called Compass. And the only thing preventing Compass, which is on your phone, which you could show to an officer, from being a valid license is our state laws. So with all that information being available and being accurate and verifiable online, all this bill seeks to do is to remove the requirement of a wet signature on a license and make it so that when the DNR has inquiry or is speaking to you, you can just show that license on your phone and have all those what we'll call endorsements or add-ons, not have to keep printing out new licenses. It's a simple and straightforward bill. The DNR didn't add an amendment for commercial. Commercial is not impacted by this for the fishing realm. And then also my colleague who is on your committee, Senator Gallion, has an additional amendment, which I believe he has already offered from the DNR, and that deals specifically with the stickers that go on your boat. So with that, it was moved unanimously in the House, and I think it will make a great more benefit for our sports men and women. So with that, I ask that we move favorable.
Thank you. There is no other oral testimony. Senator Gallion is on a required training. That's why he's not with us for this hearing. Let's go to Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Hornberger, good to see you. I just had a quick question, which is about identity theft and fraud. And I wonder if so I don't have a hunting license or a fishing license, so this is truly a question of ignorance. Is the permit owner's photograph on that, and would that show up in a phone if DNR, law enforcement, whatever, was asking to demonstrate that? How would we make sure that I'm just not using, Senator Carrozza's license or something on my phone?
So with a hunting license, the actual paper license itself, and this will be duplicated online, has your driver's license number, date of birth, sex, eye color, height, and weight. Okay, so I'm going to go back. I'm sorry, continue. So all of those would be verified by the officer, and that driver's license number is also in their system that they access when they question you or have a concern or what have you. Okay, so devil's advocate here. I didn't drive to the place that I was going to go hunting and fishing, so I didn't bring my driver's license, and I don't have it memorized. And let's say I'm with someone of similar height and weight and eye color, which is not that hard. I'm kind of medium on those. How would law enforcement know that it's me? Because DNR has the same access to the licensing database that any regular police officer has. So as soon as you give them that information, they can look you up by name, address, date of birth, and then they have a picture of that in their system that looks like you and has your driver's license photo. Right, but my case was I don't have my license with me and I'm not required to because I'm not in a vehicle. If I get pulled over while driving, I have to be able to show my permit, which has my photo and stuff. But if I'm walking or boating or something, I don't need to. Yeah, you just give the officer your information and they look you up in their computer. And then all that information is there, available to law enforcement. They're no different than Maryland State Police or a sheriff's deputy. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Senator Riley.
Senator Riley, yes, thank you.
They can look up, the DNR can look up your motor vehicle license online.
Correct.
So as that 16-digit number, he can pull it up on his computer, what you look like.
Okay, so even if I don't have it with me, even if I haven't memorized the number, she or he. Yep.
He can pull it up on his computer through the Motor Vehicle Administration access.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Delegate Hornberger. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And if there's any confusion, we can have them call Mr. McKittrick. So
yes,
give him something to do.
Nice.
Okay.
But great questions.
Questions for Delegate Hornberger? Seeing none, thank you, Delegate. Committee, once again, reminder, we have 2 bills tomorrow at 9 a.m. B&T is taking up current 2.0 at 5. They may have a couple financial ones we just have to sign off on. And then apparently there are a couple of amendments to the mail ballot legislation that we will need to address tomorrow.
Clarifying, Mr. Chair, do you expect us in person in the committee room or will that be virtual?
I'd like people in the committee room.
Okay, thank you.
And it should be a half hour. Hopefully we're done by 9:30. Okay, I'm sorry that has to be so early, but I know there's some other meetings being held tomorrow morning before session. So we've got to do what we got to do. Anyway, we're still finishing at a reasonable hour. Thank you all for your attention and engagement. And we are adjourned. Thank you.